Good evening, everyone, and thank you so much for joining Deep Space Wine, a Star Trek podcast on DS9, as the title suggests, in which two viewers, myself, a grizzled older fan who saw DS9 when it was first syndicated in the UK in the early 90s, watches alongside my good friend Kat, who is new to DS9 and experiencing it for the very first time. So we get their interesting, unique perspective alongside my boring retention of nerdy trivia, and between us, we hopefully produce an interesting podcast for you. So, thank you so much for joining us. As always, we ask you to engage with us in the chat, but please forego spoilers so that we may preserve Cat's unique take without spoiling anything too much for them. Thank you very much. This week's episode is, of course, from season 1. It is called If Wishes Were Horses. And as always with the podcast, we will go through it scene by scene, to point out the things we like, the things we don't like, and just sharing our opinions and views as we go along. But to kick us off, I am going to hand over to Kat for an episode profile. I will just flag, we did have a conversation about content warnings, as we always do. There's some general peril, but not more than we would normally see in Star Trek, beyond one rather visual scene in which Kira experiences a hallucination or a fantasy of fire. And we will kind of show a snippet of that scene, a very one single frame, but just kind of warn you that that is coming up. If that kind of thing does bother you, please prepare accordingly.
It's very Star Trek.
It is, isn't it? That was one of the first things that went through my mind. Was this compares to, other Trek episodes such as what was it? Well, there were various TNG episodes and TOS episodes where the crew are confronted by make-believe characters that come to life. I'm thinking Trelane from the original series, who could create entities at a whim and whose canonicity as a Q is always up for debate. TNG, again, always tormented by Q in fantasy lands where imaginations are released.
Yeah. And much later in SNW, there's an episode where everyone turns into characters from a storybook.
Of course, yes. Excellent comparisons. Thank you.
I think that the episode it most reminded me of was actually a Babylon 5 episode, which didn't come out until 5 years after this one, actually. Day of the Dead, written by Neil Gaiman, where a few core characters meet someone they know who has died and have conversations with them. And I think that the theme of this episode fits quite nicely alongside that one, of the idea of it displaying something of the characters who are having the imaginings. We learn something about them from who they see.
I think that's the key difference, that this is entirely generated within the imaginations of the cast crew, the crew of DS9, whereas most of the other Star Trek episodes are our crew behaving normally, reacting to a situation that's generated by somebody else that they have to overcome. Whereas I think DS9 is more about overcoming your own, fears, I suppose, in Brian's case, or embarrassing fantasies in Bashir's case. And we'll, we will tackle that. But yeah, an interesting one, and also a bit of a gamble, because similar to the Naked Now in season 1 of TNG, I feel like it's about showing our characters out of character, or an exaggerated version of their character. So I do think it's a gamble of an episode. We're just still establishing these characters, and now to throw them into an extreme scenario where everything's completely different. I don't know. It feels like a gamble.
It could have gone badly wrong.
I think.
But I think it's also quite a light-hearted episode, and it's
100%.
one that doesn't have many heavy themes in it. So I hypothesize that this is an episode whereby if they'd had to change the running order, this can sit at any point. There's no continuity that requires this episode to be in a particular place. So it's a nice little episode to have in the bag to pull out if one week there's been a real-world event which mirrors events that happen in one of your episodes. You can replace it with this one quite easily. So it's very functional as well as fantastical.
Exactly. Yeah, no, it's the beauty of a bottle episode, which all Star Trek relies on all the time. Just a good filler for the middle of a series where you've got an arc or you've got continuity issues, as you say. And would you believe Cat doesn't work in TV production, but clearly could, because they've got the technical knowledge.
No. I'm too fussy. Before we do start describing this one, I wanted to shout out to the Star Trek Minutiae website for having the shooting scripts for every episode available to the public, which makes it nice and easy to look through and see what some of the intentions backstage. And to Trek Core for having high quality screen caps of I think every up-to-date episode of Star Trek. So yeah, that made it nice and easy for us to get some pictures for you of things that happen in the episode.
Yes, thank you so much to them. And as we said in the in the setup for this episode, we wish we'd had it sooner because some of our screen caps previously have been a little bit grainy because they were all we could find on Google image search. So we hope to improve the quality of the images we can show you in the stream, and we will show them as we go through the episode. But yes, let us dive in, and like so many episodes so far, we start in the bar. Brilliant.
We do all that. This one has got so many pre-credit sequences.
I noticed
I think there are 3 different locations with 3 different groups of people before the opening credits even roll. There's a lot of setting up in this episode.
Which is amazing and great, really enjoyable that they are putting so much effort into putting a foundation on this episode, which is really good. Bodes well. But yes, Odo is in the one of only 2 places we've really mainly seen him, his office or the bar, his second office, where he is, according to my notes, lurking like a Benarian hawk looking for prey. And Star Trek is so good at that, you resemble X name that the writers have just invented and that we may never hear from again. At least this time it's not from Rigel, which a lot of things have been from Rigel.
Everything's from Rigel.
Everything's from Rigel.
Yeah, Benarian, nice.
Yeah.
But yes, Quark, and as we heard in the summary, Quark suggests that Odo relax with a holosuite program. And Odo first says he doesn't accept gifts from the like of Quark, who says, "You pay like everyone else. I'm just trying to get you into the tent," which I thought was a really weird turn of phrase for a Ferengi to use. Has he ever seen a tent?
I have no idea. I mean, presumably they have some kind of outdoor shelter. Later on in the series, we will see Ferengi and Quark's homeworld, and it looks like Manchester. Covered in rain. Constantly raining. It rains all year round. Sorry, friends from Manchester. But yeah, that is.
We could probably put it down to the universal translator. Maybe Odo doesn't hear it quite that way. But I went and looked the phrase up because it was unfamiliar to me as well, and there just isn't much on it online. I couldn't find an etymology from it. I can only assume that it's an American idiom that hasn't actually been used very much, but whose meaning is quite clear. You picture a market or a fairground. There's a tent. They're just trying to get punters in, and Quark is trying to tempt Odo to sample more of his wares, given that he doesn't ever seem to buy anything in the bar.
He doesn't, does he? We never even see him drink or eat, which I understand is not something that Odo does physically. So he literally is there, as Nigel points out, observing the dodgy deals that are done in the bar. And it does make sense, but, you could also read the subtext of the blossoming relationship between Odo and Quark and their old
He doesn't
married
like to be far away from him, does he?
He does not. No. He does not. But it is Odo again who is there with some of the grimmest philosophy on the station. And, they're talking about holosuites being fantasies and escapes. And Odo says it's people dreaming of places they'll never go and things they'll never have rather than paying attention to their real lives. Now, I get that they're setting up the episode, but that's miserable.
It's miserable, it's heavy-handed, and it's a big fuck you to sci-fi fans who spend so much of our time
My God, that's a really good point.
Thinking about places we'll never go, imagining people we'll never meet. God damn it, Odo.
He really is just dumping on everyone at this point. How disappointing.
He's a joyless man.
He is, and I do think that we're establishing that as his character now, and hopefully they will broaden it and deepen it and give him some more complexity to deal with.
But it very heavily highlights that this episode is going to be about imagination. But yes, Quark then offers to make a playmate for Odo. The two of you could, and he holds up a blue drink and swirls around in his glass, and the two of you could intermingle.
Now that I liked. I like that.
Because, of course, we know that Odo becomes a liquid when he's in his resting form. So Quark is imagining how 2 shapeshifters might enjoy each other's company.
That's some interesting creative thinking there from Quark. I guess
I think so, yeah.
He's always catering to his clients, but he is essentially thinking about Odo. So, I'm just going to leave that information out there. That's going to go into your mind. You're going to think about it.
It's not the first time Quark's thought about it, is it?
Right, the subtext, that lovely, lovely subtext all of DS9 is just wonderfully, wonderfully what it
But I
is.
enjoy that Odo replies to him, "You're disgusting," and Quark says, "It's a living." He's just not bothered by it. He's completely unfazed by Odo's opinion of him. Good
Of
for him.
course he is, of course he is. And, I do think there is a practical, if somewhat seedy reality to it. Quarks is a very successful business by all accounts. People use those holosuites all the time. He is clearly giving people what they want, and they're not even hiding behind, TNG's kind of the holodeck for art and music and plays and that kind of thing. They're like, nah, it's for one thing. Ha ha ha.
Yeah.
Rub sands. So I appreciate the kind of the reality of it, which is you might not like it, but it's happening and some people do. So you're going to have to get used to it. So
Yeah.
I really enjoyed that. But I also did make a note. This is again Odo being somewhat intolerant, and I've written no kink shaming on the promenade.
Which is a great phrase. I want that on a t-shirt.
I think if they aren't out there, they must be, because the Odo saying that you can't do fun things on the promenade, there's probably like a vast list, and that's somewhere near the top. So I just didn't like that Odo was actually slamming the concept, which I think,
Yeah. He's yucking someone's yum. There's just no need.
Yes, perfect. Thank you, Kat. Couldn't have put it better myself. So, yes, thank you. And then they talk about Jake, I think. Is that when Jake comes in?
Yes, quite nicely. Jake walks, I think, behind Odo across the screen, and the camera follows him so that we can see where he's going.
Yes.
Again, this is another episode where the direction is quite nice. The use of cameras is very thoughtful and works well with the narrative. And yeah, I noted that Jake was carrying a baseball glove and bat.
Yes.
Which it both illustrates that people often take people often take equipment into the holosuites. Happily, we haven't seen anyone carrying anything especially lascivious just yet. But we've previously had in TNG, we've had Picard taking his saddle, which again could have other uses. He takes his own saddle, which he owns because he's very upper middle class, into the holosuite to ride his horse.
Yes.
There was another example, and I've completely forgotten what it was. But for Jake, his baseball mitt, glove, bat, they're sentimental objects, and it's quite nice that he gets to play in the holosuite using his own stuff.
Definitely. I do wonder how that might work, though, because we've seen inside the holosuites, and it's a room about the size of like a conventional British bedroom. So if you hit a ball towards the far wall, I mean, we've talked about holodecks before and how they exactly work, and I think they use transporters. And it's not just moving images, because that won't work if there's a wall just there. I think they might have to keep transporting the ball as it goes further away.
It's a very good question. I know that he was carrying the mitt and the bat. I can't actually remember whether he's carrying a ball at that point. It's possible that it's a hollow ball played against a real bat.
There we go. You see, we're focusing on the real, core issues in this episode. Do not let me derail us again. But yes, obviously.
Earlier, I mentioned the phrase bringing someone into the tent.
Yeah.
And the Doc is speculating that it may have subtext coming from military use, given how much military presence has been around and the shared history that Odo and Quark have working and living under occupation. Really, so yeah, it may well, so as well as being a trade phrase, it may be about bringing someone into a negotiation tent, say, just trying to get someone on side. So yeah, thank you for that, Doc.
I like that. But
yes, next up, we're talking about Jake going into the holosuite, and we've got a 3-part list. Quark said that Jake's father bought a program with famous baseball players. You ever hear of Tris Speaker, Ted Williams, or Buck Bokai? And this is a really classic Star Trek phenomenon. The 3-part list where you've got 2 real-world characters, real-world people, and then a third who is fictional within that world. So I looked these people up. Tris Speaker was a centre fielder born in 1888. Ted Williams, a player and manager, born in 1918. And Buck Bokai is a third baseman born in 1998. All of them end with an 8, and I have no idea why that is. But yes, 2 real people, one fictional.
Fantastic. And you're right, Star Trek does do it a lot, and I think other sci-fi franchises and concepts do it as well. It's great. It's a good bit of world building. It ties, the real to the unreal. I think Discovery does it very clumsily with Wright brothers, Amelia Earhart, and Elon Musk. Which I can see how they're trying to tie into real world events, but I just recommend against it because you never know. you know, at what point that might suddenly turn sour on you.
I
So
think it's always safe to have someone who is not still alive when you're listing these people. Similar to my rule for getting tattoos, don't get anything of someone who's still existent in the world. That can become a horror.
this is one half podcast, one half life advice filtered through the lens of Star Trek. We bring it all to this podcast. We bring
Yes,
it
but
all.
yes, Quark says that he's made it his business to find out who
Yes,
these
I
baseball
like
players were.
this.
And he says, with all these humans coming on now, the
Mm.
entrepreneur knows how to sniff the wind. It sounded so strange to hear Quark saying humans, even though it's a Ferengi
It
staple,
is.
because he speaks so fluently
Mm.
all of the time. The early
Mm.
Ferengi, less so. They spoke in
Mm.
shorter phrases, they mispronounced things frequently. Humans has been held over as something that Ferengi will frequently say, but it still seems really weird coming from a bartender who has heard the word human pronounced the same way by many different
Yeah,
people
you're
to
absolutely
hold
right.
on to that old Ferengi way of saying it. It
That's
just
a
really
really
stood
good
out
point.
for me. It's very
Yeah.
odd.
Do you think he's intentionally doing that, or is it an unconscious holdover? Do you think?
On Quark's part, I just don't know. I think it's
Mm.
been deliberately left in the script
Oh yeah, yeah, I would say
Armin
so.
Shimmerman.
Mm.
But yeah, I'm not sure. I think it is just to keep him tied in as a Ferengi. It's the way that Ferengi say it, and they'll try
Exactly.
not to have them say it any other way.
I think you're right, and we are because we are even for us, we're seeing these episodes very close together, so we're experiencing it very quickly. The concept is obviously that it's supposed to run for a long while, and this is still relatively early in Quark's story. He is still relatively new to working with humans. So I can understand that he might occasionally slip back, but it does seem a little odd, as you say. The context is
Mm.
he deals with us day in, day out, and has had already some hair-raising adventures with us. So it does seem a bit strange that he's not picked that up already. But
But
yes,
yes, Odo
mm,
replies to him saying that he has no sense of smell, which I don't think we knew about Odo so
no,
far. He
I don't
can't
think that's
smell
come up.
anything. Presumably, he just cannot fabricate the organs required to do that.
Mm,
And and Quark replies to him, "You don't need to have one to detect the scent of
opportunity.
opportunity."
I love the way he said that. And that's another key phrase in that Ferengi language, isn't it? Opportunity. It is. It's a mantra
Opportunity.
to them. It's a goal. It's a lifestyle. It's an aspiration. I love that. I loved him saying that.
And Quark then goes on a little flight of fancy, imagining all the family entertainment he would like to offer. Hollow
Yeah, this
creatures
was
running
weird.
around,
Yeah.
rides and games for the kiddies,
Giddies.
Ferengi standing there selling useless souvenirs.
Anticipating like a Comic Con years before such a thing would have come into our lives. No, I'm kidding. They're all right.
And Odo asks him, "So you're going to replace all sexual hollow programs with family entertainment?" And Quark says, "No, I'm just expanding." Odo says he's still disgusting, and Quark just says, "Till the day I die." Absolutely shameless. We love him for it.
Absolutely. He is his own Ferengi, and I can't fault him for being 100% himself. I
Heck
love that.
yeah.
And I think that then takes us to the balcony, where Dax
Yep.
and Bashir are having a drink.
Cringe Central.
Yes. So the ongoing pursuit of Dax by Dr. Bashir, which is every time it crops up, it is awkward and cringe-inducing, which I guess it's meant to be, but yeah, I don't know because I've seen it 100 times and it still does make my skin crawl. I
Yeah.
think it's as times have changed and the context is more, unequivocal, that you can't just keep pursuing someone and wear them down in the way that the 90s might have thought, and that's now seen as very, very suspect behaviour. I think that's what it is, and we've mentioned this before how we do see DS9 through, 21st century lens that means we
Yeah,
have to address these
definitely.
kind of things head on. So, I
Yeah.
mean, yeah,
And I think that as a situation like this one where Dax keeps rebuffing his advances, he keeps making them.
yeah,
I like Terry Farrell's acting in these scenes,
mm.
that Dax is acting as the older person that she
Oh yeah,
is.
yeah,
In this
100%.
scene, it very much shines out that her attitude is, you're young, you
Hmm.
will get over it. I want to be your friend. I'm
Hmm.
willing to be patient. She's still very warm towards him. She isn't sick
Yes,
of his company. She isn't fed up of him. He really should have stopped trying by now.
yes,
But yeah, but she is still very warm and smiling towards him, which I think is very generous on her part.
I think so. I
Yeah,
mean,
my notes about Bash. Sorry, Tim.
I was just going to say, I mean, I kind of feel a little bit awkward because she's obligated to because
Mm.
they work together. They're both senior staff on the
Mm,
station, so she has to
this is very
maintain
true.
a relationship, a good working relationship with him. So I
I
think,
feel though that the power
mm,
imbalance between them
mm,
lies genuinely in this case with her. I think that scenarios like this were often written in the 90s, such
oh
that
yeah,
the woman has all the power as the gatekeeper of whether or not the guy can have sex with her. In this case, it is just that she is a very empowered person. She is a lot
sure,
older and more experienced than him.
mm,
She's in a position to turn him down while knowing that it isn't going to impact on her career in any way.
that's true
Um,
actually. Yeah, yeah.
so yeah, I think it's not as bad as it could have been if he were her commanding officer, for example.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. I would agree with that. And thankfully, we see as well that the station is aware, Commander Cisco is aware, and I don't think he would brook any nonsense, and he quite clearly recognizes that the situation is happening, but also has faith in Dax to handle it herself. He doesn't have to step in, get heavy-handed, or make it weird, or even try and
Yeah,
protect Dax.
definitely. And I
So,
think in terms of how Bashir is written,
mm,
not only in this scene but elsewhere, he isn't just a one-note character. He's not
no,
Ross
true.
in the first season of Friends, who can
Good,
only talk about his crush on Rachel.
good comparison.
We've seen
Yeah.
Bashir in lots of different situations with different characters. He
Hmm.
doesn't mention Dax when she's not around,
That's true.
not because he's not genuinely interested, but because he's a rounded person.
Yes,
He
yes.
isn't just a man in pursuit of Dax.
No.
And
Indeed,
indeed,
that's. I
in
know
this scene, she puts out that. Sorry.
you're going to say exactly what I was going to say. Please go ahead.
Just that she points out that he has been seeing other women who he describes respectively as a poor substitute for you
Hmm.
and the Betazoid envoy, a barely adequate substitute. And he's very clear in this scene that he's a little abashed, but he enjoyed the company of these women.
He
He
did.
wasn't just glomming onto them because he couldn't get Dax. He liked being with them, and now he's just trying to excuse the fact that, yeah, he wants to sleep around with a load of women to this woman who he wants to emphasize. But you're the most important one, honest. I don't know. There is something, I think there is still something of puppyish charm, even while
Yes.
I cringe horribly at the way that he's trying to seduce Dax when she's made it very clear she's not interested.
Yeah, I think that is a good take, and it is clearly written in a very light-hearted way, and it's clear that the power and authority does rest in Dax's hands. It resembles structures that we see more often uncomfortably and very kind of with a power setup that's very in the hands of an oppressive, other figure. So yeah, I like that DS9 is at least trying to show that it does feel more like comic relief ultimately.
Yeah, definitely. And yeah, I don't like it. It's cringy, but I'm not offended by it.
Yeah,
I just think it's a bit
absolutely.
awkward
Yes,
and
it
veering
is
towards
awkward.
friend zoniness.
Yeah, it is. But I do like that ultimately Dax does shut him down and says, "You should have a high frequency sonic shower. It'll make you
Yes.
feel better." And he says, "No, it won't. I've already tried." Which I love. It is ultimately him
So,
with, egg on his face, rebuffed again, down on his luck. It's great. It restores that power level with Bashir being more of a comic relief figure and Dax, in charge, in control, and
yeah,
unfazed. So it ultimately manages to save itself at the end, I feel.
I think so. And in the next scene, Dax is riding the turbo lift up to Ops, where she
Mm.
arrives and tells Cisco, "Sorry, I'm late. I was having dinner with Julian." Cisco asks, "How is our young doctor?" And she says, "Young," which I think bears out my feeling that Curzon Dax is looking out through her
One,
eyes and going, "I've been there, mate, but no, give it up."
I immediately got the same thing. I thought when she spoke to Ben Sisko, her former protege, that was Curzon. And I love it. It was a single line, but it just suddenly made me think there is such a depth and complexity to the Dax character there. Loved that. Loved that one line.
And then Kira says that they were looking at an unusual energy reading, and
Mm.
Dax has to say, "Elevated thoron emissions in the plasma field," which reminded me of that anecdote by Andre Bormanis, who was a science consultant on
Mm.
DS9, who once told Terry Farrell that he was responsible for the technobabble
Yes.
in the scripts. And he alleges that she lifted him up by his lapels, called him a fucking asshole, and shook him. Because she hated memorizing this
Hmm.
nonsense.
Hmm.
But yep, there are elevated thoron emissions in the plasma field.
And she's such a good actress. Terry Farrell delivers it convincingly, even though these are
Yes.
nonsense words. She delivers it smoothly, effortlessly. You know, So I have a little
She's
bit of
worked hard at
sympathy.
it, and she does it
She
well.
does, and I love it. She's stepping into the same role essentially filled by Spock and Data so far. So those are big shoes to fill, and she does it so well whilst being very different to them. That
Mm.
I'm always impressed whenever they give Dax plenty of science to play with. I think brilliant. Let's do it. So I thoroughly enjoyed that.
And then they
Um,
have a nice little. I think this is a very Deep Space Nine style science discussion.
yeah,
Cisco says we thought it might have been an environmental byproduct caused by increased traffic in the area.
I
It
like
isn't.
that.
It won't be. At
No,
no other point in the episode will they mention this again.
no,
It
and
doesn't
they
have to be in
should.
the script. And yeah, it's brought in just because it's the kind of thing that they would think of. The station hasn't been there that long. Any
Hmm.
anomaly nearby could be explained by the high amount of traffic that's suddenly in this part of space. It's great. I love it.
I love it as well. It is. I've made a note here. This is. I'm impressed. This is good world building, and it is a reminder that we have to stay and fix problems on Deep Space Nine. We can't just warp away. So if this
Mhm.
is a problem caused by more traffic to the station in this new part of the Agent Patrol system, we're gonna have to fix it. We can't just be like, "Damn, that looks pretty bad. Well, I'll see you later," and whoop. They actually have to fix it. So I liked
Good
that.
observation. Yeah, it is part of the more static nature of this
Hmm.
this particular trek. Dax then settles to investigate whether the disturbance might cause any problems for Deep Space Nine. And I've just made a note that it'll be at this point when Dax starts to imagine what the anomaly might be.
Yes.
Because we've already got the increased thoron emissions, so
Hmm.
the events are about to start
Hmm.
happening, and she's starting to wonder what this might be.
Hmm. Hmm.
Initiating moment. We then go to the third,
Yes,
no,
it
it's the fourth
is.
location, but the third scene
Third
in
setup.
this pre-credit sequence, where Miles O'Brien is reading the story of Rumpelstiltskin to his daughter, and Keiko is watching and smiling. And Molly, played by Hannah Hasse, adorably says, "Rumpelstiltskin," whatever she's calling to. It's really sweet.
You know what? And it's so sincere as well. I think this could have been written too kitschy, too schmaltzy, but it actually just feels real. It feels like a family doing a family thing. And also, I did make a note that finally, O'Brien gets a chance to be a good storyteller.
Yes, a couple of episodes we had the episode
He's
called
been
Storyteller
practicing.
when he was demonstrably terrible at it. Oh
Exactly.
yeah, Paul Meany does good voices, and he
Right?
does a good little evil Rumpelstiltskin voice.
And he's
And yeah,
engaging. He locks eyes, He really imbues it with presence. So all I can think is either he was put off because he was trying to do a story in front of like an angry blob in the sky, and stuff was blowing up, or he's just been practicing, trying to make good on it. So one with the other, brilliant storytelling from O'Brien. Loved it.
and then once the story is told, Molly has complained that she isn't tired yet, and she's just told, "No, none of that. Go to sleep."
Yeah,
And then Miles and Keiko leave the room, and they're
yeah.
talking about, "Are you going to tell me a bedtime story? Only you could be tucked in with me." Oh, yeah, they very clearly want to wander off and have sex. But then the child comes out of the room, saying that, "Mommy, he's in my room." Keiko asks her, she's like, "Rumpelstiltskin." And O'Brien firmly but kindly says, "Sweetheart, that was just make-believe. Rumpelstiltskin isn't real."
Yep.
And then asks his wife, "Why do we tell her stories about evil dwarves who want to steal children?"
What a good point. And I think this ties into that whole grim fairy tales, renowned stories for children, all of which are, depending on how moderated they were by subsequent editors, horrendous. Absolutely
Yeah.
horrendous. So I think he raises a really good point to which he will not get a good answer.
But to be fair, one of the theories about why fairy tales are so horrendous is that it prepares children for a world in which
I can
death
see
can
that.
happen, in which dangers exist. And Molly is growing up in that world. It's a very dangerous place out in deep space.
It absolutely is, yeah, 100%. And this is
yes,
a prime example.
It is. They go into the room, and Rumpelstiltskin is sitting on the bed. And delightfully, I think we've got a picture of
Let
Rumpelstiltskin
me
in his
bring him
makeup.
up now.
And he is played by Michael J. Anderson, who played the man from another place in Twin Peaks. He's the guy who speaks backward and dances unnervingly. He's great.
Absolutely brilliant. A big fan of Twin Peaks, and it took me a while to clock that it was the same character, because obviously this character is so remarkably different from the man from another place, who is, well, I mean, just absolutely incomparably weird. So it's great actually to see Michael Anderson's range here, because I think he's great.
Yeah, absolutely.
As
He's really good in this episode.
so.
We'll get into it, but I'm sad that they didn't make more of him in this episode, I think. But anyway, Rumpelstiltskin tells him, "Don't look so distraught. I'm only here to offer you my services if you should need them." And then we get opening credits.
Yes, 100%. So
Um,
I like how they've gone from the domestic conventional setup of the station right into the start of the mystery, and it is a longer pre-credit sequence than usual, but it feels well used. It feels like plenty happens. You're invested. You're pulled into the show. We know
yeah,
we've got
definitely.
stuff going on in the bar, interpersonal relationships, an anomaly, and then something really weird, and you're just like, that's the first
There's
five
a lot
minutes.
in it.
Bring it on. No, so I really enjoyed that.
So yes, when we come back from the opening credits, we're back in the O'Brien's quarters, and Molly is looking absolutely delighted that Rumpelstiltskin has turned up. But Miles scoops her up and takes her safely out of the bedroom, telling Kago to get her away from there.
Excellent.
And Rumpelstiltskin says it's a pity you're sending the ladies away. It's as if all the life just went out of the room.
That's such a good
It's
line.
he's a mix between very charming and very threatening in this episode.
Perfect balance. Perfect.
O'Brien calls to security, and while he's doing that, Rumpelstiltskin is walking around the room just casually picking things up and throwing them down and looking in drawers, just overturning everything, looking for the straw that
Yes.
O'Brien must want to be spun into gold,
That's the plan.
which is really sweet. I like that. It's whimsical and it's fun.
And it's real
so
as well.
O'Brien,
You can see him messing with props, which isn't something that normally happens in Star Trek. Normally, you have your tricorder you pick up, or you're pushing buttons on a computer. This is real, like, stuff he's picking up, throwing around.
you've
It's
got little
great. It feels
jewelry
physical.
boxes that belong to the
Yeah,
O'Briens, ornaments, just
and they're
everyday
everywhere.
objects. And he's wandering around just in complete chaos. Oh. But yes, O'Brien asks him who you are, who are you? Rumpelstiltskin replies, surely you must know. You were just telling the little one all about me. And O'Brien replies, I know what you look like, but you're not. And Rumpelstiltskin asks him not to say his name because he doesn't like it. So O'Brien, of course, tries it. Why not? And Rumpelstiltskin just grimaces and says, you didn't think that would break me in two and cause me to break in two and disappear, did you? Not this time. I learned my lesson back in the kingdom. I don't need deals like that anymore. Which is really shrewd because they could just have had a guy who appears and is then immediately disappeared by people saying his name every couple of minutes. But I think what they don't give here, which I think they wanted to give more weight to, but I think they chose not to, is the threat that's involved here. Rumpelstiltskin is known for stealing young women away. The only way that we know to banish him has been done away with. O'Brien has no idea how to get rid of this guy who potentially poses a threat to his daughter. And it's not really leaned into until very late in the episode, I think, because it would just have been too dark and too difficult to deal with within the scope of the 45 minutes. O'Brien has a lot of practical stuff to do around the station. He has a lot of interacting with other characters, a lot of trying to fix things and scan things. And they just don't have time for him to be running off to find whether Molly and Keiko are okay every time Rumpelstiltskin appears and then disappears.
It's a really good point. And we talked a bit in the pre-setup about this, but also Rumpelstiltskin was a very late addition to the show because, and I am turning it as always to the captain's logs, informative backstage production manual by Edward Gross and Mark A. Altman, and they do say about this episode, one figment of the producer's imagination that never made it to screen was his initial decision to have the story O'Brien reads to his daughter be that of a leprechaun, the folkloric Irish dwarf, with a pot of gold. Says Michael Piller, the exec producer, we needed a reason for it to be happening, and we came up with the idea that O'Brien would be telling a bedtime story about a leprechaun. We had the script written, and Colm Meaney, who plays Chief O'Brien, called Rick Berman, the other exec producer, and said, every Irish actor I know has worked his entire life trying to overcome the stereotype of Irish people and leprechauns. It's really racist, and I don't want to do it. Pillar says, we had no idea there was any sensitivity to leprechauns in the Irish culture, which is a little
short-sighted.
Try, you know. Certainly, we did not want to force Colmany to act with a leprechaun. But what the hell do you do after you've got a whole story structure about a leprechaun stealing a child? Well, we went through story tales, and one of the writers came in with Rumpelstiltskin, and we went by it at least once, maybe twice, because Rumpelstiltskin wasn't really the same thing and wouldn't work in the structure we had. So you're starting to see how the plot and the developments are starting not to line up. When I finally sat down to rewrite it, I said, okay, Rumpelstiltskin, let's see where it goes. It was one of those scripts where I had no idea how to resolve it or where it was going to go. I wrote each scene to see if it worked and had fun with it. So I did think that's important to observe because I think it's one of the key stories that Colmy talks about the making of the show, because we'll remember, long-standing Star Trek fans will remember up the long ladder, which has some interesting Irish stereotypes in it in The Next Generation, and Colmany
It's
very
horrific.
uncomfortable with it at the time. But I can imagine back then he was just a supporting character, technically.
So whereas
Now he's a main cast member. He must feel more confident. He can push back against the creators, leaning into some really tired Irish stereotypes. So
yeah, and
I
good on him
like
for
it.
doing that because I think
Exactly.
Yeah, Rumpelstiltskin. I don't think there are any big issues around his
No,
character.
I
He
wouldn't have
doesn't
thought
make
so.
fun of dwarves or short people per se. He's a very specific character from folklore, played
Yep,
very quirkily and in a fun way by Michael Anderson. So it's a
it's
good
great.
change.
I
But yeah,
thought
it
so.
does make sense of why you've got a character who famously disappears when you say his name, who cannot do that
Cannot
because
do
they
that.
need him to stick around for the whole episode.
Yes, and less kind of child stealing, I think, as a result of them desperately, crowbarring in somebody who isn't leprechaun. I didn't think leprechauns were particularly famed for stealing children, but my own folklore knowledge is pretty limited, so I'm going to await expert
Nice.
correction on
But
that.
yeah, but I am very glad that
Yes, that they
yeah,
didn't do
they
it.
didn't have someone mimicking an Irish accent, or indeed just having an Irish accent while being a leprechaun in the episode. It would have been painful to watch, and especially so for anyone from the Irish diaspora.
Excellent point. So, thank you for the background. That is
Yeah.
good to cover off, and I'm very pleased for Colmini putting his foot down about that.
Oh gosh, yes.
Um, so yes, so they're
And
having
yeah,
this
then
conversation, and I think, unless I'm skipping ahead, this is the point at which O'Brien also calls Cisco.
he does, yes. And Cisco is just lounging in his quarters in uniform, one foot up on a table, and
Hmm.
he's reading from a pad. He says he'll be down directly. And as he heads out of the door, Jake arrives and says he has to talk to him. Cisco says he doesn't have time. Then an
Hmm.
off screen character clears his throat. And it's Buck
But
Bowtie, his
Bowtie,
favorite baseball player, who I think we've got an image of here
let
from
me
a later scene because it's a clearer image.
bring that up. There he
Um,
is.
and he just arrives and says, "Hello, Ben." And Jake says he followed me home from the holosuite. Yeah.
According to my notes here, played by Keone Young. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. And a really, really great, warm, magnetic character who I think, as we later found out, is kind of the de facto leader of the Figments, as I refer to them in my notes. But yeah, a really great character. I just wanted to flag as well that when O'Brien calls Cisco and says, "So you better get down to my quarters right away," he doesn't explain what's going on, and Cisco doesn't ask. He just goes.
You're
Which
right. Yes, he knows that he wouldn't ask without good reason.
exactly, and I
Yeah.
think even though we're so early still in the first season, it is a testament to I think the developing relationships, which is as you say, Cisco knows O'Brien wouldn't bother him, especially out of hours because they're clearly both in their quarters. They're clearly off the clock. This isn't a work thing. This is a serious scenario which O'Brien can't or won't describe over the comms. Just like there's got to be a good reason. I'll go straight there. I like
You're
that.
right. Good. That shows trust. It's nice.
Exactly. Yeah. So I love that.
Such a good manager. God
He
damn it.
is. He is a good manager. Yeah.
The next scene is in Bashir's quarters.
Okay. Yes. Let's get
Bashir is
into it.
interestingly still in full uniform,
In
lying on the
bed.
bed. Does he? Does he have pajamas? I know that in the script he has to get up shortly and go down to ops, so I think it was probably just to spare him having to change. It might
Change.
be that he works long hours as a doctor. He's taking a nap in
That was
preparation for a
my
night
impression.
shift.
Yeah. Because there's also no sheets, no bedclothes over him.
Well, he's got
So
his com badge on. Everything is just lying there.
yeah, I do feel like he's just come into his quarters, fallen onto his bed, and haven't we all been there? That's fine. I
Yeah.
accept that.
Happily, though, we don't all immediately lie down and start having fantasies about our co-workers. At least I don't. I would like to reassure any co-workers who
Sure.
might come across this. Not interested in any of you. Sorry. Um,
And no judgment here. Look, we're not here to pass judgment on people. We're here to pass judgment
I am.
on Julian Bashir. Okay, fair enough.
Yes.
We're going to judge Julian Bashir here for his. Yeah, he's clearly having a pleasant dream before anything happens. I think that's
Yeah, I think
visible.
he's like his hands are in view. It's fine, but he's kind of rolling over and thinking about someone in his sleep, making
Yes.
happy little
Yes.
noises, and then another hand, which isn't his, comes down and touches his arm, and then touches his cheek. He
Yes.
chuckles in his sleep and rolls
Yes.
over, and then we have an image of when he wakes up and
Let me
realizes
bring that
who
up.
it is.
It is Lieutenant Jadzia Dax. And she does not seem to be acting like Jadzia Dax at all.
And to his credit, he recognizes that immediately. He doesn't just assume,
I
oh, she's come round finally, I've persuaded her.
yes,
He's deeply unnerved, and he
is.
reaches for his
Tricorder,
tricorder
which he
and
has by
starts
his
scanning her.
bed. I mean,
Again, he's a doctor. He could be called at any moment to a scene of an incident. I
suppose.
think it makes in story sense that he has a tricorder with him at all times, even though they're terrible for telling when people are dead.
Alive or dead.
Oh,
He will never get away from that.
but yeah, she leans in and starts kissing him, and he says,
Yes.
it must be this Lerosian virus that's been going around. So I've written, he might be horny, but he isn't stupid enough
Exactly.
to assume
I
that
like
this is real.
that.
Yeah, to assume that either this is really Jadzia or that Jadzia has changed her mind. He knows something is wrong
Something is
here.
wrong.
He asks her how she feels, and she hornily says, wonderful. Terry Farrell really throws herself into this here.
Yes.
She's the difference between fake Dax, how I refer to the character throughout, and real Dax is night and day. It's a really good characterization of a version of Dax that fancies Bashir and is completely different from the normal one. So he raises the tricorder behind her head while she's trying to kiss him, scanning her, and says, no fever. Must be me. I kind of leans away from her to look at his tricorder, get away from her trying to snog him. Says, it must be an allergic reaction to the reclamated antipasto I had at lunch, perhaps. I must be hallucinating. But his tricorder isn't telling him that anything's wrong. He's checked both of them. He's run through things that it might be. None of them are quite checking out. So Dax says, why are you fighting this? Bashir asked himself, why am I fighting this? Why am I fighting this? I have no good answer to that question. And they slowly move out of shot of the camera for just a brief moment before Kira, I think it is, calls down from ops, saying that all senior staff have to go to ops immediately.
We talked about this scene in the pre-setup, and
we both felt deeply uncomfortable about the fact that at this point the viewer doesn't know what is happening. We know that some fictional characters have appeared aboard the station, but we don't know yet whether this is the real Jadzia Dax acting effectively under a spell.
Yes.
It could well be that she is being compelled to do something she does not want to do, and it's for that reason I think that it sits really uncomfortably with me when I first watch it. Having seen the episode twice now, just to make my notes, we know that it isn't Dax. We know that this is a figment of Bashir's imagination, and he doesn't do anything with her. He's willing for a moment to contemplate having sex with her, but they get interrupted, and he doesn't go back to it after that.
Yes, thankfully.
That moment I think was deeply uncomfortable because it's so ambiguous as to what is happening, because he absolutely knows that the real Jadzia wouldn't want to do that with him.
Exactly.
But I think that for a product of its time, it doesn't go all the way. They don't end up having sex together. They don't get naked. They don't do anything further than kissing. And he does recognize early on that something is wrong, and he does his due diligence trying to check out every possible option to figure out what's happening before giving in to his base urges and just deciding that yes, it's absolutely okay given how willingly she is consenting to it. But yeah, it's a scene that makes me cringe is the best I can say for it, I think.
Absolutely. And they'd managed to swerve at the last minute away and be like, no, this isn't actually going to happen. But the build-up was suggesting it was going to head that direction, which is an uncomfortable decision to make, for the characters we like. It also runs counter to a lot of in-universe kind of lore, I would say. Well, no. As with all shows, somebody's required to hold the idiot ball, as TV tropes would put it. And, a Starfleet officer waking up to meet a colleague who is acting really out of character, they should always assume that something weird is going on, and you can't just go along with things. This is Starfleet.
He knows the tricorders can't do everything. We've had this,
Bingo.
Bashir. You know that they're fallible. What are you doing, mate?
Exactly. But I get that they were playing it for what would have been seen as, laughs back then, and now is a little bit, quite a bit uncomfortable. So, we have to say it's an artifact of its time. Thankfully, it didn't get any worse. Instead, I think Bashir starts pulling his shoes on and saying, "Oh, very funny. Did you put me up to? Did O'Brien put you up to this?" Which I like.
As soon as the call comes through from ops, he assumes that it's a joint joke on the part of the rest of the senior staff because they know how much he fancies Jadzia, and it's so out of character that Jadzia must be in on the joke. Yeah.
And I like the idea that O'Brien might be a bit of a prankster as well. Did O'Brien put you as this one of his pranks? I like that idea.
Yeah, because they hung out relative 2 episodes ago. They hung out for a length
Hmm.
of time and
They did.
didn't talk about Dax once,
No,
notably.
no, very good point.
Um, but yeah, the cast are getting closer, so the idea that they might be playing jokes on each other isn't completely unrealistic by this point, I think.
Hmm. Hmm. Definitely.
But
So,
yes,
everyone up
they
to
then
ops.
yeah, all props. Cisco introduces Bashir and Dax to Harmon Buck Bokai, a baseball player from the London Kings who's been dead for 200 years. And Buck quite adorably says, "Don't look at me, I can't figure it out either."
I made note
And
of that as well. I love that line.
I really love how Buck Bokai is played. There are any
Yeah.
number of ways that they could have written him and that Keone Young could have played him, but
Hmm.
he's just warm and affable. He doesn't
Yes.
really know what's going on, but he's a genuinely nice dude. He just
Hmm.
is throughout the episode.
It is, and it pulls you in, and I think preserves the mystery some more as well, because you're like, oh, if he doesn't know what's going on, who the hell does? It's not like many
Yeah.
other Star Trek episodes where it's been kind of half detectable that somebody's masquerading with ill intent,
Hmm.
whereas Bukai's convincingly, although we realise later, he does know what's going on, but in this he's convincingly like, I don't know why I'm here, and
Yeah,
it
this
pulls
isn't
me in.
Moriarty coming out of the deck and trying to take
Yes,
over the ship.
yes,
It's a guy who is sprung
perfect.
into being and has no idea why he's
Yeah,
here. He just knows that he loves baseball the whole
yeah.
time.
Exactly. That's a great comparison, by the way. Actually, I love the comparison with Moriarty, a very beloved TNG nemesis for his 2 episodes. So, but yeah, perfect comparison, and yeah, definitely with ill intent on his mind.
Mm, wouldn't be Moriarty without it. But yes, Cisco then introduces them to a medieval fairy tale character called Rumpelstiltskin. And Rumpelstiltskin says, "Oh, fine, now everybody knows my name." And then lightly punches O'Brien in the chest because he assumes he must have told him. So it just kind of reinforces that the episode is a very light-hearted one. There isn't much of a sense of threat as of yet. It's mysterious and it's a bit
Mm,
silly. Cisco then asks Dax, who has arrived with Julian, whether this could be related to the increased thoron emissions in the plasma field.
mm,
And Dax looks
mm,
confused and goes, "Thoron emissions?" At which
mm.
point, real Dax arrives saying, "I think you'd
You
better
better
ask
ask
me,
me.
Benjamin." And we know it's really her because she calls him Benjamin, which is just a
Yes.
lovely immediate tell that this is Dax. She then goes and stands next to Bashir with fake Dax on the other side, clinging
Yes.
onto his arm, looking a little worried. Cisco raises an eyebrow and Bashir looks panickedly from one Dax to the other. Oh, it's so silly.
It is. I wish I got a picture of it actually, but Cisco's smirk when he
I
sees,
don't think I
and
noticed the smirking.
it's on screen for about a second, and he immediately, I think, clocks exactly what it is. Ah, Rumpelstiltskin is from O'Brien's story, Buckeye is from our holodeck program, and Bashir has come here with a slightly dizzy Dax. And it's just obvious, and it's just like, oh my, I can't think of anything. This is another time that Bashir has had a terrible encounter with Cisco in Move Along Home, when he was screaming in his sleep to try and wake himself up, and he wakes up and he's in a bizarre labyrinth with his boss stood
Oh
over
my
him,
god, he's
and
been
now
cringe in front of his manager so many
exactly,
times.
now he's in ops with his imaginary plaything in front of his boss. I do feel for Bashir. He is such a true toy for season 1.
Oh, back in the chat, Nigel Mouse notes that it seems odd that it wasn't long ago that Bashir attempted to befriend O'Brien, but they didn't click, and now Bashir and O'Brien are pals enough that
Oh,
they
that's a
play
good point.
pranks on each other. It's a good point. I think
Mm.
that might be an artifact of this episode being a. I think it probably was a floating one. They decided the
I
running
was
order
just going to
fairly
say
late in the day.
exactly what you said
Um,
earlier, that this might have been written and filmed out of sequence with what's actually going on with the overarcs. But that
Yeah,
is
so
the
it
risk.
might be that they've become better friends by this point, or just that the writers of this episode anticipated that they would have because it would take place, say, after episode 10.
Precisely.
But yeah, it's a good point. It is a mark of that little bit of lack of character continuity, which I think Tim has reassured me does get better as we go along.
Oh, excuse me. I did enjoy the smooth editing. I thought
Mm.
when Jadzia passes behind Bashir, and what I've written down as Fodax, because they've both got
Oh
X's at
yeah,
the
nice.
end, it's very smooth. For 1994, I thought it was quite smooth. Um, so I did enjoy the effects there. I was quite taken in with it. Um, And
Oh yeah, because does she have to pass behind her,
yes, to get
her
to
fake alter ego in order
yes,
to get to the? Oh, I didn't even spot that. But yeah, that's just it. It was so
it
smooth. I
didn't
didn't even
clock.
notice she
Yes,
walked behind herself.
exactly. No, very
That
effective,
was
I
impressive
thought.
for the 90s.
Um, and then the next thing I have is that Bashir rebuffs Dax while she faux Dax while she makes a pass at him, and she disappears. Unless I've skipped something
I
there.
think that happens later on in the
Oh, I do
episode. At this
apologise.
point, she's just it's okay. There's a lot of Daxes in this episode.
Hmm. Hmm.
I think at this point, Sisko raises an eyebrow, but she looks panicked, and then
Yes.
we get an exterior of Deep Space Nine, and then back to Ops, where Buck Buckeye is being scanned by Bashir, while Buck is
Yes.
telling Ben that Jake has been playing baseball well lately, but they'd had to stop because Jake was getting hungry, and Buck realised that he was too. And Kira remarks, a hologram with an appetite? And Buck looks around confused, goes, hologram?
Hologram? Ben, what's he talking about? Yes, I do remember this now.
Yeah, and Bashir says that on the contrary, Major, they're quite real. They all seem to be.
Mm,
And Buck asks, what the hell are they talking about, Ben?
that's
Quite reasonably, poor
it.
dude.
Mm.
And here the shooting script has a really nice direction for Sisko. It says Sisko looks around, uncomfortable, confused, trying to figure out how to talk to this entity. And there is also a little bit of the awkwardness that comes with confronting one's heroes. Yes, he has been with Buck in the holosuite, but that's a baseball fantasy environment. Now he's here in Sisko's world. It's so much instruction that poor Avery Brooks have to take on for encountering this dude in a baseball suit. It's really cute.
Yeah, that's good.
And
That's good
Sisko
direction.
says to him, you're not actually Buck Bokai. And Buck says, how come I'm wearing this uniform? And Sisko explains, you're a holographic image of Buck Bokai that I created so Jake and I could play ball with you.
Hmm.
And Buck says, but I remember all the games. And he gives a few of his notable achievements, which I've jotted down and I went to look up some of this.
That's incredible dedication.
It includes the day I broke DiMaggio's consecutive streak, which refers to Joe DiMaggio, a baseball
Mhm.
player from the New York Yankees, who was born in 1914 and who also dated Marilyn Monroe.
Famously.
And I found that interesting partly because just in my own moving through life and through pop culture, I first heard of Joe DiMaggio in the video game Indiana Jones and the Fate of Atlantis, because in that game there's a corkboard at Indy's University with various notices pinned to it, including one that says, that gum you like is going to come back in style. Twin Peaks gets everywhere. And
Oh,
another one that
word.
says, where have you gone, Joe DiMaggio? Which I didn't know at the time is a lyric from Simon and Garfunkel's
Yes.
Mrs. Robinson.
Good God, so it is.
Yeah, and I just find it
amazing.
interesting how many years after someone has died, they can keep coming up and being
100%.
given to a new generation of people.
Yeah.
Lots of young DS9 fans probably hadn't followed baseball very much, but here they are encountering the names of some of the greats in a sci-fi series, which I assume is a relatively rare occurrence that the worlds of sport and sci-fi meet in this way, just because the fans tend to be different. Sci-fi
so.
fans aren't known for their interest in outdoor pursuits. It's a stereotype, but it broadly holds true.
I would agree with that, and off the top of my head, I can't think of Star Trek really achieving it any other time quite as effectively or at all. So yeah, but I think Sisko's love of baseball is an integral part of his character, of Jake's character, of their relationship, of Sisko's life. So I do think they do it justice. Although we have no frame of reference beyond, they turn up in other pop culture entries because we're sci-fi nerds. We don't get baseball.
Can't help it. Sisko then explains that he programmed all this into a computer, every statistic, and at that moment, Rumpelstiltskin says to O'Brien, what foreign tongue are they speaking?
Yes, that's a brilliant line.
And O'Brien points out this guy didn't come out of any holosuite. And Sisko says, but he did come out of your imagination, just as Buck came out of Jake's. And Fake Dax then hornily says, then I must have come out of your imagination, Julian, and kisses him. And he just is surrounded by his co-workers and his boss, who says, not necessarily. Real Dax looks at him highly amused, and Bashir says, well, maybe. How could this possibly happen? He's really dramatic and upset, which again is really reasonable when your co-worker is confronted with your fantasy horny version of her. I'm just really glad she's in full uniform.
Oh God,
that
yes.
They haven't gone as far as Dax in a bikini, because I think that while there will be a shot later of women in bikini that another member of staff is imagining, they wouldn't do that to Dax, I think. I think that would be an indignity too far for a member of the core cast, which might be a value judgment on my part, given that they're willing to have other women dressed in bikinis. But yeah, they don't do that. They don't do that to or with Terry Farrell and her character. Bum, 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 bum.
So
yes, real Dax says that there's a space disruption, maybe some kind of dimensional shift. I didn't see an anomaly when I scanned the plasma field, but it could have been so small the sensors missed it. Again, she's trying to work out what it is that's going on, which will cause problems later.
Yes.
Damn it, Dax, pontificating. Fake Dax writhes sexily and says, "Come on, Julian, let's go to your quarters." Bashir says, "Please, I don't have time for this." And fake Dax just disappears out of existence.
Yes.
A moment later, Odo calls Cisco, "Is there something you want to tell me?" And I think we've got an image of what Odo is looking at.
Just before I cut
Cisco
to that,
says, oh, sorry.
I was just going to say this is a bit of a Star Trek trope, which is when somebody calls you up over the communicator and says something's happening or we're in trouble, and there's no context. And I do like Cisco's immediate rejoinder, which is, I'm in no mood for games, Constable, which I think is a reasonable thing when somebody calls you up with just such a vague statement and you're in the middle of a crisis. This is where Star Trek fails so often with clear communication over comm channels. It infuriates me.
You don't really have a protocol for there's something happening
You
here.
need
It's
to tell me.
Tell me what the heck.
Tell me exactly what's going on.
Yeah, it is kind of also reasonable that Odo assumes there are things happening elsewhere. He doesn't assume that it's just snowing in this one small part of the station. He assumes there's more widespread horror going on.
It is. That is a good point. He might think it's entirely localized to him, which is reasonable. And he does clarify that the reason he's calling up is because there's something wrong with the environmental controls, possibly, for it is snowing on the promenade. And I will bring that picture up now.
It's possibly culturally interesting that Odo knows what snow is. Because he doesn't know. I think it's canon at this point. He doesn't know where he's come from. He doesn't know anything about his background. We don't know whether they have snow on Bajor. I know that they have winter on Bajor, so perhaps they do have precipitation similar to what we have on Earth, and Odo might have experienced that before. But yes, they've got. I think he estimates like 5 to 6 centimeters of snow. Which is nice and metric.
Yes, we've taken that into space finally. Excellent. And it is just a beautiful shot. Actually, there was a lot of snow there.
It's a really nice effect. They've used a lot of fake snow and had some people running through it just to demonstrate that yes, it is really falling on the set.
It's really falling. It's great. Yeah, it's a great image, definitely.
So Odo reasonably asks what's going on. Cisco says, "It seems we're letting our imaginations run wild. As soon as I have an explanation, I'll give you one." Kira asks, "A yellow alert against our own imaginations?"
Yes. Cisco says, "Do you have a better idea?" Which I think is reasonable. Kira's question is reasonable. Cisco's response is reasonable. Neither are ideal, but what else can you do?
Yeah, and it did occur to me at that moment when she asked that and when Cisco said, "Well, what else can we do?" The episode could have taken a much darker turn. We could have had people who are aware that their imaginations are going to come to life. Some people's anxious response to that would be immediately thinking of the worst things that they didn't want to happen.
Very good point.
There's that scene it's not quite the same, but the scene in Ghostbusters where it's empty your heads, don't think of anything, or else it will appear.
My head. Same thing came into my head.
Dan Aykroyd's character's response is to think of the most harmless thing that he can, something that could never hurt them. Stay puffed marshmallow man, who then comes to life as a giant kaiju and tries to kill them all. But yeah, the episode could have taken that turn. They could have gone into the psychology of when people are confronted with the fact that their worst fears might come true. They're going to focus on them more, people. Immediately. And how they would manage that and try not to tell them, or tell them in a limited way, or try to encourage people to think about particular things that couldn't hurt them. They could have gone in many different directions with this, but I think they do a good job of just keeping it on a nice broad, loads of different kinds of things appear. There isn't it will always be a person, or it will always be a scenario, or it's kept open enough that the writers can just do what they like with it, I think.
Without, seriously derailing the plot into just how the hell are we supposed to survive this, or this is impossible to film.
Because you could have done a whole sci-fi series about this happening and how society adjusts to it.
Oh, God, yes.
But yes, they do well at keeping it, which we don't. They do well at keeping it small. Oh, yeah, I put down, imagine if Reg Barkley had been on board. Everyone would have died very, very quickly.
Oh, my God, yes. Nervous broccoli would not have helped the situation. Sorry, Reg.
But yes, Technobabble ahoy. Dax says, "Look at the wave patterns in the plasma field." O'Brien responds, "The wave fronts are converging against a single point." Dax, "The particle density rises as you get closer to the center, and then it looks to drop off completely. Whatever falls in there is just gone." Rumpelstiltskin then asks O'Brien if there's anything he can do to help. He starts prodding at a monitor, but his hand is slapped away by
I
O'Brien.
noted that as well. I do love that interaction. Perfect little scene.
At which point Odo calls in again, saying the snow is gone, but now there's a Gungy jackdaw running loose.
Jackdaw.
We've got an image or
We
two of
do
the Gungy
indeed.
jackdaw.
Let me bring up the Gundy jackdaw there, and just credit to Rene Auberjonis, who's acting with a bird, and he's very close to it, and kind of meeting its gaze and looking around it, and he kind
It's
of
really
moves.
lovely. I think it's at the moment when he says what the bird is that the emu raises its head and
Like it
comes level with him.
recognises.
What do you say? He just holds its eye gaze, keeps staring it down. And I said that I thought it was especially fun to have a live animal on screen
Yes,
because it's so
100%.
rare that it happens in Star Trek, and especially a chaos goblin like an emu. They're reputed to be very ill-behaved and destructive. And it's when it stands up, it's nearly as tall as Rene Auberjonois,
Who is
who was incredibly brave when faced with it.
Yes, I thought incredible. He keeps character, and it's just like, yes, I am a space cop shooing an emu off a space station, and he does it. He does it with conviction and that traditional Odo, and it's brilliant. It's a beautiful, really short sequence, and I think he actually says to it, "Come along, move along now."
He does, and then he gives it a little pat on its butt to get it to move.
Okay, that's not approved policing methods, but the come along, move along now. Nothing to see here. Just an emu on a space station. Perfect. Absolutely top tier policing.
It's wonderful. I'm calling it a Gungy jackdaw as well. Just getting a normal Earth bird and giving it a weird Star Trek name and
like
not
a Benarian
sticking anything
hawk.
to it. Oh yeah, Benarian hawk earlier.
And you're right. They thankfully did not hassle this poor bird by giving it ridiculous prosthetics like they did, I think, in the original series. I think they had
a little dog with
the
a
dog
horn.
with the horn. Oh my good God!
So cute, but so stupid.
So stupid. But yes.
Odo then goes into Quarks, where people are, of course, excitedly playing Dabo. And someone throws a coin pouch down from the mezzanine level, someone else who catches it and then carries it over to the table.
Brilliant sequence. Up at Odo's, he walks in.
There's so many moving parts here.
Yeah, and it looks up and you realise that really is on 2 floors. It's technically on 3.
They play about it every week, but it is exciting.
Great.
And they're throwing objects between floors. And Odo looks around for something he can bang to make a noise because no one's paying attention to him. And I think it's Rom or another Ferengi who walks past him carrying a tray.
He snatches off the tray.
Scoops up the Raktajino cup off the tray to bang it on the table like a gavel. It's wonderful. It's also it's so physical, so many moving parts between the cameras, the actors, the props, and it comes together wonderfully. It's really nicely choreographed. And Odo then says, "Ladies and gentlemen," and he watches Morn go by, "and all androgynous creatures," which is kind of cute, but also Morn is male. Don't
Morn,
misgender Morn.
I've also made a similar note, which is Morn does identify as he/him, so it's a Star Trek gag, and at least they are countenancing.
At least they're acknowledging that some alien somewhere might not be male or female. For God's sake, people, it's the 1990s.
Revolutionary for then, At least they're starting. They're trying.
They're giving it some thought. But yes, he asks them all he says they're experiencing some difficulties and asks them to please refrain from using your imagination. At which point, more moving parts. Quark and 2 ladies walk down a spiral staircase together.
Oh, yes.
The 2 women are wearing metal-plated bikinis. One of them is an Earth woman. One of them is a Bajoran. And Quark just being lascivious. I think we've got a picture of the 2 ladies.
Let me bring that up there. There we are. Yes.
Oh, Quark. I've written that, this is very Quark. I can't even complain that it's sexist because at this point, Ferengi are just deliberately written that way. I think that unfortunately, the Ferengi are given some of the worst excesses of late 20th century humanity.
Absolutely.
And disrespectful lust for women is one of them.
Oh, it's...
And not even Ferengi women. They disrespect their own women so much that he's going for women from 2 different species.
100%. I do think it's a unique thing, which is that... we often see Quark lusting after females of other species, Deep Space Nine will not always be very good about this. In fact, sometimes it will really lay into these stereotypes. It's no spoiler to say one of the reasons we don't see Ferengi women very often. Ferengi culture requires them to be naked at all times, which I think they would have challenges putting on the show, and they work hard to get around when they do include female characters. But yeah, it is a bit clumsy, and again, we have to go, okay, some of the writers are just 90s sitcom writers who are trying their hand at sci-fi, so we're going to have these kind of
And
things.
there is also the depiction isn't necessarily a condoning of what is happening. They're pointing at Quark and going, look at this guy. But yes, Quark assumes that all of this might be a clever Federation experiment
I
gone
love
awry.
that.
The whole station has been turned into one vast holosuite, which is nice. It is understandable that someone in Quark's position would assume that that's what's going on. Everyone's fantasies are coming to life around them. It's just like a holosuite. Yeah.
And I love that Quark also thinks, oh, is it a Federation experiment that's gone wrong? He is Star Trek. He is savvy within his own genre. Again. Everywhere they go, weird stuff starts to happen. They meddle, they interfere, they stick their noses in things, and weird shit happens.
Who's got the power and the technology to make this work? It's the Federation.
It is the Federation. They're in charge, and since they got, I bet under the Cardassians, weird stuff didn't happen half as much as it did.
It's true. It would have been unpleasant, but less weird.
Yeah, exactly. And in the 6 months since Cisco took over, just bizarre stuff was happening every other week. So so this is, I get that Quark's actually like kind of. He's savvy in universe to his genre's excesses, and I love that.
He's lampshading what's going on.
Precisely.
But yes, Odo says that the phenomenon is being investigated, and Quark says, well, tell them to take their time. I haven't had the chance to show the ladies my collection of Tatara's landscapes yet, which is a really nice little reference to the kind of come up and see my
etchings. Yes, I remember hearing
which is a euphemism for inviting people up for sex.
Absolutely, and it's quite an old cultural reference as well.
I assume it must be. It's much played on. I think I first heard it referred to as "come up and see my exotic lithographs" in an episode of Blackadder.
Yes.
So it is really cute. I like that.
I like it as well.
Intergalactic version of that. And Odo expresses surprise at Quark's attitude, but Quark is at this point enjoying umox from one of the ladies.
Oh dear.
That Ferengi specialty whereby someone caresses the ears as a sexual act. And he replies with his eyes crossed, you simply don't have the appreciation for art that I do.
Yeah, I like his pause and art.
But at this point, a Dabo player shouts, Dabo! And laughs excitedly. And Odo points out that every one of Quark's customers is winning and they're taking you to the poorhouse. Which again, I know that Earth culture goes through some ups and downs, but poorhouse?
Yeah. Right, this is our third reference to something that is really, really old. Joe DiMaggio, Come Up and See My Etchings, Poor Houses. All of these
coming into the tent. They all feel, they feel like very old references.
They're really old Earth cultural references. It's quite unusual, actually. I hadn't put it together.
The two main writers on this episode were Nell McHugh Crawford and William Crawford. I don't know how they are related, but I assume that they are. And I don't think they wrote any other Star Trek episodes. So I don't know what their other specialties might have been, but I think they've probably got quite a wide cultural purview. And they bring in little phrases and quips that, predate DS9 by a very long way.
By a long way.
And which in a 1990s sitcom set on Earth would sit really comfortably. And I like that they've adjusted them slightly when they use them. But yeah, you're right. It makes a use of a lot of anachronisms, which is a little unusual.
Love anachronisms. Yes.
Then when Quark realizes that he might be going bankrupt, he finally kind of wakes up and says, no, that's not possible. And he has the Dabo tail, and there's a lovely little sequence of him popping up behind different players while they're playing and just kind of urging them to lose.
And
then Quark refers to some of the Dabo rules. He's doing it, looking at the board, going, 1 cross, 2 cross, with no explanation as to what they mean. And I mean, you could play a really long-form game of Mornington Crescent with Dabo. Just introduce random. For anyone who doesn't know of it, Mornington Crescent is a game from the Radio 4 series. I'm sorry, I haven't a clue, I think. And basically, all of the cast pretend that they're playing a game called Mornington Crescent, which has rules, which all of them know, which they're making up as they go along.
It's brilliant.
And then arguing with each other and countering them. That one only counts on every third Sunday. It's extremely silly, and it's really easy to play because there aren't any real rules to it. And you could easily do that with Dabo, for which there's no proper gameplay. Just just goes randomly. So I will be happy if that happens, if we get more peculiar Dabo rules and contradictory Dabo rules popping up in the future.
We could do a special
Um,
one-off where we try and play a game of Dabo against each other and see how that goes. So we will
when we
keep
got
that.
alcohol, let's bring gambling in. Why not?
Yes, please don't shut us down, Twitch, please. If that's against the rules, please don't. It's a joke. It's a fake game, please.
Odo points out that Quark is outnumbered, presumably
Mm.
meaning that there are so many players imagining
Imagine
themselves
they're
winning that
winning. Yeah.
Quark's imagination can't overpower them to change the situation. One of the women starts stroking Quark's ear again, and he just waves her away distractedly while he's staring at the Dabo table.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't kind of return to how this fixes itself, because okay, fictional characters appearing, they disappear at the end of the day. The emus appearing, they disappear.
They do. Mm-hmm.
The Dabo game doesn't necessarily involve any
Yeah.
fake money changing hands. The fictional element is just the situation, the way that the game plays out. And after the game's played and the table's been reset, what evidence is there? So all of the latinum that's being paid to the players.
Do they keep it, or is it like is it the question of like if you go into the holodeck and eat a massive plate of buttered crumpets, for example?
You come out feeling hungry.
Have
It's
you
a good point. Would it disappear from their purses later?
these
But
these?
I kind of assume that the money being exchanged is real, because the winning situation is actually happening,
It's
as far as
happening.
everyone
So
knows.
something's paying out. Yeah,
It
absolutely.
would have been nice to have had a little postscript scene of Quark going around recollecting the winnings, claiming that none of it counted. But yes, it doesn't happen. We've got no idea. We just know that Quark presumably doesn't go bankrupt.
Yes.
We're back in. I think the next scene it's either in Ops or it's in Bashir or Dax's office. It's just a space where there are two computer terminals on opposite sides of the same desk.
I think they're in
Dax
a
says,
lab. Yeah. A lab, I think. I think they don't show it often, but there is like a dedicated science room on DS9, and that's where they are.
Yes, of course. Yeah, we've been to Dax's lab.
Yeah,
which always looks to be Dax's lab. But yes, so we're in Dax's lab. They're each on a computer, and Dax says, "I was afraid of this. The proximity of the wormhole is amplifying the rupture," which is very plot pertinent, as we discover later. Bashir starts apologizing to Dax, but she cuts him off, saying there's no need, and in a way she feels that the rest of them have invaded his privacy. We all have fantasies and dreams we keep to ourselves, thoughts that should remain private. And I think that's very open-minded of Dax.
I thought that was very open-minded, and I do see her point. I do. I think that ultimately Bashir is clumsy and a bit annoyingly persistent, but I don't think he would ever want this. Yeah, I do think he's right. She's right. It is an internal, private fantasy that I don't think he would have ever shared or inflicted on anyone. If he did,
definitely.
that would be horrendous. But it is
Absolutely, but no, he's been open with her about the fact that he's attracted to her, that she's always on his mind.
Yes.
It's understandable he has some sexual fantasies that are a corollary of that, and yeah, she doesn't for a moment blame him for that happening.
It is a very mature and enlightened scene, and I did enjoy that reaction by Dax.
And one of Dax's next responses, Bashir says that he's glad that she understands, and she says, "Of course I do. I was a young man once." And I've put here that I just really like that there is nothing at all in Sidigel Fadl's response that suggests that he is uncomfortable with that or dislikes it. There isn't a moment of him going, remembering that she used to be a man at one point. He knows this about her, and he's attracted to her. It's part of who she is, and he's absolutely fine and unfazed by that. And it's nice that the production team didn't try to push him to get a reaction shot at that point. It's a low bar to pass that it's not transphobic, but I'm glad of it at the moment when they could have inserted something for comedy there.
I think you've put your finger right on it. I would have expected it, to be honest, because I can see that in that early 90s attitude towards things like gender interchangeability, it wasn't nearly as progressive as we are now, so they would have probably played it for gags, even in a well-meaning show like Star Trek, but they don't, and this is thankfully something that is consistent throughout Star Trek, which is Dax and Trill's past gender history is just taken as fact and is not at all remarkable. It is only ever seen as admirable, and what a wealth of experiences that gives you, and you're comfortable inhabiting one gender or another. They don't go as far as exploring any others, but it's a start,
Yes.
And it does show a wonderful willingness and acceptance to kind of interact with that kind of complexity of gender, which I don't think they'd really done very much of in TV. I think Star Trek definitely spearheaded that. I think there's a TNG episode where Riker runs into a race of androgynous aliens, where I think gender identification is actually seen as a bit of a crime and is punished. The Janai, I can't
Yes.
remember anything more about it.
Yeah, I think you're right. And the whole culture has become gender neutral. They
That's
don't
right.
refer to each other as male or female. And there is one member of the race who believes that she is a woman and wants to
Yes,
be a woman.
that's
Um,
right. So they're starting to sound this out, and this idea, and
mm,
also in the extended literature, the Andorians have about 4 or 5 different
oh, nice.
genders. And that leads to some very interesting kind of family setups where there's like, oh, two of one gender, one of another, two of another, and one of another. And they have like these quite
Oh,
complex,
it's so
large family groups. So Star Trek can do it, and little things like this, just one line that can just make all the difference. So yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed that reaction as well, and it adds more complexity to Dax's character as well. So
It does, yes.
brilliant.
But then a moment
And then
later, when they've
immediately,
both agreed that it's absolutely okay, Jadzia then says, "She really is submissive, isn't she? Is that how you want me to be, Julian? So submissive." And then fake Dax walks in and says, "I'm not submissive, am I?" And looks to Julian for reassurance. And once again, he's just going, no, I don't think so. And fake Dax then says, "I'm just not the cold fish, you are," to Dax. And a little bit later, "If you'd get off your high horse, you'd start to appreciate Julian." And Bashir just goes, "Ha, she has a sense of humour, as I've always imagined you do." Just doing his best to allay the fact that his fantasy is hideous.
I've got to admit, at this point, I was getting a little bit unsettled
Oh,
because, yeah, is that how Bashir sees it? That he thinks Dax is brushing him off because she's a cold fish, because she's on a high horse, sees herself as morally superior, because that's not the case. And I'm a bit concerned that Julian does think that of her.
I've written a rant about this. Is it all right if I just read from
Please,
my screed?
please.
Thank you. Okay, I think it isn't actually a plot hole per se, but I do think that it's a problem of either uneven characterization of Bashir in the early stages of the show, or the writers not really understanding what they were writing, or the writers not anticipating how Siddig El-Fadl would portray Bashir. I don't think it's any stretch on my part to say that Jadzia is a powerful character. She's old, she's wise, she's very rarely flustered. Her whole being and presentation is in no way submissive to him. And we've seen Bashir with other women. He shows off, he's confident, he knows he's the bee's knees. There's a little bit of kind of alpha male in there. So why do we assume that Bashir is interested in Jadzia Dax? We could assume that it's a very 1990s thing, that for a man who can have any woman, it's only the woman who doesn't want him that he's drawn to. But I reject that idea because he was fascinated with her from the moment he met her. And the episode, I think, would have played out with him realizing that he would get bored with her as soon as she was interested, if that's what they were aiming for. And I don't think that Bashir wishes she would like all the other women that he fancies and who fancy him. He likes her as she is. So for him to imagine her as a fawning, helpless person who needs him, I don't think it makes sense. And in terms of their sexual dynamic, I think it's extremely clear that Bashir is a submissive bottom who falls into the dominant role in relationships due to 90s gender norms. For example, look at how he was when meeting the calm and collected Garak. Bashir was flustered, excited, shy, awkward. And Jadzia is a dominant top, and he fancies her because she is a big and tall and strong and dominant woman. And an imaginary Jadzia who wrestled into the ground and then made him beg for mercy would make a lot of sense. The one that he's imagining doesn't. I think the writers just fundamentally misunderstand Bashir's attraction to Jadzia, and I think they might not have had a great grasp on the dynamics of attraction in general, and they write something very strange and boring as a result. The only way around this that I can think of is to imagine that Bashir's real kink is a humiliation kink. He's only imagining submissive Dax so that he can be super embarrassed in front of real Dax, and that's why he imagines her as submissive, so that he'll be made to feel shame. And that's the end of my sex education for this episode.
Oh, dear me. Superb. Cat, that's the kind of perspective that I never would have come to myself. But now that you say it, it makes perfect sense. I did think that ultimately it makes no sense. Surely everyone is attracted to Dax because, yes, she's beautiful, but she's smart and confident and in control.
The assumption seems to be that he likes the outer shell and wishes there were a completely different person inside it. It's weird.
That does not track, and you're right, especially on a show like Star Trek, where we are always encouraged to see people as more than the surface. So you're right, it is jarring, but I do like your very imaginative interpretation of the character, and
I haven't gone to read fanfic yet, but I'm certain there's fanfic.
Oh my god! You open that door and it just seems like a comedy where it all just falls out and buries you, just rafts of it. I mean, I'm on Tumblr and I, follow some DS9 tags, and it's like, oh, wow, cool, okay, yeah, it's not my particular channel, I will say, but I love how interpreted it has become. I love that people get joy out of that kind of interpretation of the characters. And that's why I am delighted you have shared that with me, because it's not something that would have occurred to me, but I can see it. I can absolutely see what you mean. And you know what? That makes the episode better and redeems the characters in my eyes. So I'm going to go with that interpretation. Thank you, Kat. Your rant has saved them.
Bashir.
You know what? It ties in so much with... So everything we've seen of his character is him... Yeah, it follows. It really follows.
I think so. And I feel that Siddig Al-Fadl knows this. He plays the character consistently, regardless of what he's been given in each episode. He knows who he is and what he wants.
100%. 100%. I'm just going to quickly flick back to the Captain's Log supplemental text here, because they interviewed Terry on this, and she says, I think If Wishes Were Horses was the first time it sort of all gelled with Siddig. She actually calls him Sid. With Sid's and my relationship, suggests Terry Farrell. It took a long time before it all came together. I don't think it looked that way to anybody else, but I think this was the first time we were all really together, and it all seemed to gel. It was an interesting moment where we realised we're like this basketball team, sports reference, where we found our camaraderie and it felt comfortable. So,
that's nice.
Yeah, as awkward as we felt it, the cast apparently had a really good time doing it.
And it makes a lot of sense because Terry Farrell gets to be a lot warmer towards Julian in this episode. I love how differently she plays fake Dax than real Dax. And I think I've read some comments online where people watching early DS9 had thought that Terry Farrell was not a good actor because she's very calm and collected all the time while playing Dax. Dax doesn't have a great emotional range. She isn't very expressive. Whereas in this episode, she gets to express more. The actress gets to explore an extremely different version of the character.
I do see what you mean.
So yeah, I can see why the humor of it as well would bring them together. It still makes me cringe. A bit of me wishes it didn't exist. But I'm glad that it brought Terry and Sid that bit closer as colleagues. We're an hour and a half into this episode, and we've got loads more to go.
The
computer's found a pattern match, and Bashir says, just in the nick of time. Because, they've got the whole thing going on. Dax says a similar subspace rupture was reported in the Hanoli system in the mid-20th century, and when the rupture expanded, the system was destroyed. Suddenly, it's big and it's dangerous. We then get an exterior of Deep Space Nine and a probe flying towards the rupture.
I'm just curious about that. No, you're absolutely right. It's just I made a note of it here. The scope of this episode suddenly changes really quickly in that one line. We're like, this thing's weird and it's out there, to this thing kills star systems. An entire star. We've heard about the station being in danger and occasionally Bajor being in danger. This thing will absolutely eat the whole star system. And it just comes out of nowhere. You're in the middle of this comic scene with the two Daxes, and then suddenly, by the way, this entire star system get wiped out. And I'm like, whoa. That is what I call
it is a little bit of whiplash in terms of what's important and what's going on.
So I just wanted to note that it really took me by surprise how quickly they amped up the stakes there.
Yeah. Yes, I think we actually have a picture of the rupture we could show at this point.
And this is with them launching the probe to it, I think, because we've got a couple of them. But yes, let's show that. And there it is. And we both commented that we liked the look of this, didn't we?
Absolutely,
effect.
It looks different. There are a lot of space anomalies and space-time anomalies in Deep Space Nine, and I think they've done a good job so far of making each of them look unique. Sometimes by the coloration, sometimes by the shape, often by both. And yeah, it looks a little bit vaginal, maybe. But it looks like a good space-time rift, and it's different from any other that we've seen. And in this shot, we've got a probe entering it. Later on, we've got missiles going into it. They all look different.
Oh, Lord.
And yeah, Tim.
Sorry, Karen.
You say the word vaginal once.
Right, where were we? Yes. Oh, I did also note that before they launched the probe as well, I think Cisco says station log, because we've been making a note of all the different times they do something other than a captain's log, and I think in this scene, yes.
Oh yes, it's station log. We have launched a probe to study the subspace anomaly. Meanwhile, more than half the people aboard DS9 have reported manifestations of their imagined thoughts. And I quite like that in that moment he does refer to it as DS9. He doesn't say Deep Space Nine. He doesn't say the station. He says the name of the show. Yes.
He said the thing. He said the thing.
Yep. But yes, Dax and O'Brien are in separate spaces talking to each other over comms and both prodding things into computers. In the shooting script at this point, I found the word akudagram. And when I looked it up on Memory Alpha, I learned that an akudagram is the affectionate name given to the interactive and usually reorganizable displays found on Starfleet control panels and computer interfaces. The name was coined by John M. Dwyer as a reference to Michael Akuda, the technical advisor, scene artist, and art department supervisor who created the definitive signage styles for the new design of control panel. So yeah, akudagram. Whenever they're looking at a screen, it's often an akudagram that is on there.
That is absolutely right. Michael, alongside, I'm just looking for his wife, Denise Akuda, worked on lots of TNG as well.
Yes, I think they were the couple who'd done the images in one of the early episodes in the classroom.
Yes, yes, they did. They did the when O'Brien was doing cover, they did that. They have done imagery throughout TNG, DS9, I think a lot of Voyager as well. And their work has become synonymous with the appearance of the show alongside set and prop designer Doug Drexler. And all of them are on Facebook, just as people.
Aww.
And they share a lot of their impressions of their history working on the show. Most recently, I was watching as they were part of a group that examined a model of the Enterprise from the original series, which used to be on Gene Roddenberry's desk in the 60s and went missing.
Oh my goodness.
And has been missing for, decades and decades, and has finally been returned. And the Akudas and Doug and lots of the other production staff from Star Trek across the decades came together to kind of verify its authenticity. So I strongly encourage anyone with that kind of nerdy interest in Star Trek to go look up Mike and Denise Akuda and Doug Drexler and follow them on social media, because their stories are lovely. Just wonderful behind-the-scenes feedback. So
excellent. Oh, just skipping backward a moment, the Indoor Cat brings up a combo of Rule 34 and Rule 50. If you're not familiar with those fanfic rules, go and look them up. We don't have time.
We don't. And also do it in incognito mode. Keep that off your search history.
But yes, Rumpelstiltskin says, "Oh, for simpler times, to O'Brien, who just tells him, go away."
Go away.
As I think I said earlier, I think Rumpelstiltskin was meant to be a very threatening presence. He is incredibly powerful. A couple of times later in the episode, he refers to O'Brien investing him with an awful lot of power, but O'Brien just treats him like a nuisance. Just tells him to bugger off. And Rumpelstiltskin says, "I only want to help," and then he immediately appears in O'Brien's path and just goes, "You're in the way!" And Rumpelstiltskin says, and this might be a holdover from the previous story about a leprechaun, actually. Rumpelstiltskin says, "A farmer from Derry once tried to chase me off until I saved his crops from locusts." So yeah, I think that might be a hangover line. But the way that Rumpelstiltskin says crops from locusts, I think he's trying to get O'Brien to imagine a swarm of locusts, just because the actor emphasizes those words really strongly, and it doesn't work.
Oh no, it doesn't. Yeah. But I think that's a reasonable suspicion. Yeah.
But Rumpelstiltskin then tells O'Brien that O'Brien is afraid of him, and O'Brien replies, "Look, Figment, I'm not afraid of anybody, least of all you. You're a figment of my imagination, that's all." Yes, at this point, the Rumpelstiltskin says, "And yet you can't deny how this imagination of yours empowers me, can you? Empowers me in a way that somehow terrifies you." And he continues, "She is your firstborn, isn't she?" O'Brien is looking at a computer, but he's furious. He stands up to talk about it with Rumpelstiltskin, and he's disappeared. But O'Brien just kind of shakes his head and then carries on working. It feels as if the character is evincing far more threat than the character of O'Brien is picking up on. It just feels like a missed moment in the script. I think O'Brien this is meant to be a figment of all of O'Brien's worst fears.
Yes.
His biggest fear is his daughter going missing.
Yeah, exactly.
But I assumed they just didn't have time to play with that fully in the episode because he's got to be there relaying technical information, so they can't have him run off to check on his daughter. It feels like a strange loose thread in the episode, which doesn't ever really get tightened.
That was my impression as well.
Dax says there are negative readings on all sensors. We may be looking at some sort of folded space, and the optical readings show the anomaly is getting larger. Let's dash ahead. Cisco crossing the upper level of the promenade, and Buck Bokai is there with him, asking if he feels like taking a few ground balls. And in the shooting script, it says that Cisco hasn't got time for this. He moves on. Buck stays in stride, and he's extremely likable.
He is extremely likable.
And I just really like that they made Buck so nice, because they could have played it as a slightly tired don't meet your heroes trope. They could have made Buck Bokai obnoxious or awful in some way, and they haven't. They've made him really pleasant, and it means that it poses a problem for Cisco that this guy is just there and kind and confused and doesn't know what he is.
It puts some depth into the episode where, you're absolutely right, they could have just been incomprehensible outsiders, which Star Trek does, to be honest, fairly often. But yeah, I felt invested. It pulled me further into the show because this character was so engaging. So
yeah, definitely. And Buck kind of poses the question of, what if I don't disappear when all of this is resolved? You got room on your team for a switch-hitting third baseman with good power? And Cisco grins and says, good power from the left side, and keeps walking, and Bokai follows him, protesting that I hit over 20 homers single-handed in 3 years in the majors. And Cisco replies, and never more than 10 after that, which I assume means something in baseball.
My notes literally say, Cisco and Buck have a lovely conversation, even though I don't understand it. Because I think earlier in the chat somebody mentioned about how baseball in America in the 90s was huge, so perhaps this was trying to lure in people who weren't Star Trek fans. Seems reasonable. But for us sci-fi fans, I have put me back in
and British sci-fi fans.
British sci-fi fans, I don't know what the hell's going on. Put me back in the plasma field with elevated Thoron emissions. I know exactly where I am. No worries. I recalibrate the main deflector. Fine, no problem. But baseball lost me. But it's still, it is just a lovely interaction between two people.
It's nice, and it does that thing which we said earlier. This kind of episode can do. It brings something out of Cisco's character.
Yes.
He's occasionally said things like "step up to the plate" to Kira, who just looks confused and doesn't get it because no one else apart from his son understands baseball in the slightest. And Quark, who's got interested self-interestedly. But it's really sweet that we investigate this very geeky aspect of Cisco and this deep love he has for baseball. And it's just wholesome and nice, and he smiles as he's talking about it.
Exactly.
It's a really lovely thing.
I loved it as well.
They exchange a few more things. Cisco says, I wish I had more time for this. And Buck Boker says, well, that was baseball's epitaph, wasn't it? Nobody seemed to have time for us anymore. I could have played 5 more years if they hadn't killed the game. So apparently in the early 21st century, baseball just disappears. No one plays it anymore. And Cisco replies, you were the best that ever played. I know. I've played with them all. And I think the actor tries to wink at that point and doesn't quite manage it.
Oh, I missed that.
Just a slightly awkward one-eyed blink. He says, I've got work to do. And Buck says, hey, Ben, it really meant a lot to me how much you cared. That day we won the World Series, there were only 300 people in the stands. And Cisco replies, 301 in my version. And Buck says, I heard you cheering. It meant a lot to me. I just thought you should know in case I do finally disappear. And it's just warm. It's really sweet. It reminds me a little of Ben's wandering through the different people in his life. In the first couple of episodes in Emissary. I like that we're getting this little bit of depth and warmth from our captain, and the commander, and the reason he throws his baseball around constantly when he's at his desk.
It's good character building that doesn't feel out of place from the development of the episode. It feels very natural that this should come up because it's based in his and Jake's kind of shared imagination. So I like that a lot as well. I did note that it did get very somber by the end.
And at this point, I think Bubba Bam I don't know what room we're in, but the fictional
No.
characters are all sitting together.
Yeah.
Rumpelstiltskin suddenly flashes into existence and says, "We don't know any more than when we started." Fake Dax says, "Why would mine create a woman and then reject her?" And Rumpelstiltskin says, "Why would mine create a dwarf that could terrify him? We should abandon the whole thing." So Bookburger says, "Not yet. I made a connection with mine, a curious one. I sense a feeling from him, an affection for this baseball player who died 200 years before he was even born." And he says, "We're going to keep doing this for as long as it takes."
Mm-hmm.
And he says, "It ain't over till it's over." And he says it in a very precise accent. So I went and looked it up. And from BBC.com, American baseball legend Yogi Berra first uttered the phrase about baseball's 1973 National League pennant race. His team was a long way behind when he said it, and they eventually did rally to win the division title. I think the people who wrote the episode genuinely loved baseball too, and just thought, right,
clear.
Cisco likes it, we're putting it in there, but Bokai, going for it.
That's incredible, and thank you very much for the in-depth research, Kat. That's incredible. I just figured it was some kind of reference along those lines, and just kind of left it up to the fans. But that's brilliant, right? I did enjoy the delivery of it. It was very nice, and I like this little scene because it gives you a little bit more of a clue of what's going on, but still leaves you incredibly in the dark. You shouldn't realise.
We now know that they've got motives beyond what they're expressing. They know each other. They're all in it together.
Yeah.
But yeah, we don't know exactly what they're doing, what their aim is yet.
They are confused. They don't understand why they are inhabiting these relationships to the people who brought them into being, which just raises further questions. And I love that. I love when an episode strings out my confusion for as long as possible.
Oh, back to baseball for a moment. The Indocat says that according to a recent Gallup poll, baseball held as the most popular US professional sport up until the late 1960s, when NFL American football took over, and has been ever since by a very wide margin. So yeah, baseball was dying throughout the 20th century by the sound of it, and hasn't regained its prior popularity.
This is it.
And thank you for that, the Indocat.
Yeah, that's fascinating. And if they keep saying it was 200 years before, this is set in 2368, so 2168, 2150s, they're going to say it's going to die out, I guess?
Well, I think
Bokai
was born in 1998, and he said he could have played for 5 more years if they hadn't stopped the game. So it ends in the early 21st century.
Oh, right. Okay. Wow. Okay. Then fair enough.
So yeah, we've probably got a few more years to go at this point, but after that, no more. Bye-bye baseball. Hello, Bell Riot.
You aren't supposed to know. You're not supposed to know about that yet.
I'm sorry. But yes, Exterior DS9. Benjamin Sisko gives a station log supplemental that Subspace anomaly continues to expand, and says that they've diverted all incoming ships away from the station, which is a nice consideration. Don't bring in even more people whose imaginations can run wild. We've learned that the previous time there was a rift like this one, a Vulcan science mission detonated a pulse wave torpedo at the coordinates of the tear, which caused it to expand further. The science mission were wiped out along with the Hanoli system. The tear then collapsed and disappeared from normal space. Cisco asks if there were any reports of Vulcans hallucinating at the incident, and O'Brien says not, but they weren't in range of the anomaly for as long as they have been. Bashir points out that Vulcans are not known to have active imaginations. But again, it's a really nice exploration of the issue, whereby each member of the team is bringing their particular knowledge to it. O'Brien knows about the engineering and astrophysics side of it. Bashir knows Vulcans, who would not have imagined things as wildly as the DS9 crew are.
Now, I did bump on this a little because I always feel like Vulcans are not consistently categorized in Star Trek. My impression has always been that the Vulcans do have incredible imaginations. It is part of what they suppress. It is a Vulcan cultural and mental conditioning.
So along with their strongly felt emotions, they try not to go off on flights of fancy, but they do have the capacity for it.
I believe so, yeah. So that feels more like a little bit of very light, very, very light racism. They're like, oh, those.
It's Bashir. He referred to this as what the backwaters.
This is it. That seems in character. But I did just want to go. Actually, I think you'll find. That Vulcans do have incredible imagination. At the end of the day, they still explore. They still create art. They still create music, literature. They are great imaginers and creators. So I think it's just a lazy bit.
That's a good correction. Thank you, Tim. Lazy characterization of an entire race of people.
I did feel that a little bit, but yes, thank you for letting me say that.
No, thank you for bringing that. O'Brien suggests that tech has come a long way since then, and now they might have a better ability to control the flux density. So they decide that they're going to send some more torpedoes into the rift when they're ready in a few hours. Cisco tells O'Brien to route auxiliary power to the shields and tells Kira to evacuate the pylons with Odo's help. I assume that the pylons are the curvy bits on the station, the sticky outer bits.
It's weird that they still haven't explained it properly, but the pylons are the biggest arms that arise above and below the plane of the station.
Oh, in fact, yeah, you can see them above my head.
There they are, yes. The larger arms that reach up are the pylons. That's why they refer to, I think, lower pylon 1 is the one under the plane of the station. And then obviously upper pylon 1 is where it rises above ops. And yes, and the inner arms nearer the core, those are where they have tractor beams and weapons. So
excellent. Oh, thank you. It's nice that the design actually makes sense and has purpose.
I like that. You know, it is a reminder that, you know, it's not just like the Enterprise where you just say, oh, it's Deck 17. And, you know, when you actually look on the map, Deck 17 seems to have a hamster wheel and a bowling alley, which makes no sense. So they're trying a little bit harder to make DS9's internal space make a bit more sense. And I liked it as well.
Cool. So a call goes out to Odo to help evacuate the pylons. We cut to the promenade. The shooting script said, close on two gungy jackdaws moving down the promenade, finding Odo along with them like a school crossing guard, which is nice because it rhymes. But in the final cut, there are two Bajoran staff members herding the emus, which I suspect is because it's a very busy scene. There are a lot of people running up and down the corridor. You've got two very large, potentially violent birds present, and you've got Rene Auberjonois, probably not able to act and walk and manage that. So there are two Bajorans who I suspect were animal handlers dressed up for the role, hurrying the two emus along while Odo just walks behind them, dodging around people and telling everyone to get out of their way. We then see Kira emerging from a lift into an empty pylon corridor, and as soon as she steps out of the lift, we see a ball of flames filling the corridor and moving towards her. She's pushed bodily backwards against the wall, but she isn't burned. She calls to ops saying that pylon 1 has gone. She needs emergency, and then we've got this is where the person on fire appears. So if you're squeamish about images of flames, by all means, close your eyes, look away from the screen.
I'm going to bring it on 3, 2, 1, and here we are. And it is a really powerful scene.
It's really nicely shot. It's not I don't know whether any of the flames are CG, but the man covered in flames is Dennis Madalone, who was the stunt coordinator and received no credit for his appearance, which he should, because it's
brilliant.
It's amazing. You've got a man running down a corridor covered in real fire. And similarly to last week, or last episode, when we saw Kira set fire to a set, set fire to a house. I like that they're making use of physical effects like this, because I can't imagine that they had the fine touch with CG to be able to have someone on fire moving down a corridor looking consistently good. So they had a real guy do that.
Oh, yeah. That's actually there. Yeah. And it's beautiful, and I love the dedication. And because this is a show that's normally very dependent on CG, which you can detect in 90s TV, it's really happening. And that just really knocks me for 6, because you can also hear him, you know, audibly
he's shouting,
shouting and begging for help. It's very jarring because it's not conventional Trek. You know.
And it sits very differently with the tone of much of the rest of the episode. You've got the warmth of Book Bokai, the outright silliness of fake Jadzia, the slight threat of Rumpelstiltskin, and then you've got
mischief. And then Kira's hallucination is just this horrendous scene of the station wrecked and somebody in visible, you know, distress and danger.
Okay, shall we take the image down now so people can look back if they want to?
Thank you very much for your patience, everyone, because it is a beautiful scene, but it is incredibly
it is, and this is kind of the darker aspect that could have been included in the episode and doesn't have much weight. Kira is a person who has lived through a lot of trauma, has lived in war zones, has lived under occupation. It's understandable that her imagination takes her to dangerous scenarios that she can then predict, preempt, prevent. So we see someone on fire, the worst thing that could happen when she gets to the pylon. But the man runs up to her and disappears before he reaches her, throws down, and then looks up. And she's called out for emergency something to Cisco, and he calls back to her asking her to report. And she just says, disregard, Commander, false alarm. and she walks cautiously down the corridor, and we've got a nice picture of her checking her tricorder, which unusually it's pointing more or less directly towards the camera. I think we just haven't had a shot quite like this one before. And I just wanted to include the image because it's rather beautiful. There are several different coloured... Oh, the screen has just gone blank, I think, rather than on the image.
For some reason, we don't have... There it is. I'm totally sorry. We're actually fixing this on the fly.
There we go.
There we go. So terribly sorry about that. For some reason, it didn't immediately appear, so I've restored it. And yeah, the top of the tricorder set, prop looks amazing, doesn't it?
It's really elaborate. There are different shapes and sizes of little spaces with LEDs behind them, different colours in use. It looks as if they've got different functions or purposes. It's just, they didn't have to do that. They could have just had one little flashing light on top and we'd have been happy. But no, they designed something really beautiful.
Again, I'm going to say thanks to the production staff for doing the Star Trek, which is to really go all in with your sets, with your props. Just make things look absolutely brilliant, and yeah, that alone. It's a really brief scene. I think you see it for about 3 seconds, but it looks fantastic. I totally enjoyed that.
So Kira then puts out a call for all personnel in Pylon 1 to proceed to the outer rim airlock and prepare for evacuation. We then cut to a static view through a doorway of 2 emus, 2 Bajor. Have we had the emus all? Oh, I think they come back again.
They come back a few times. Yeah.
Still holding them down the corridor. But I like the shot because you're just looking through a doorway. The emus and Odo pass by it. And then Quark enters from behind the camera, goes through the door, and we follow him, and he walks around the bar.
Lovely. Get a sense of the scale of the promenade set. It's immense. It is massive.
And there are so many actors on set at that point. So many people in the background. You've got Odo following you've got live animals in a crowded space. It looks real. And so much effort and expense gone into having these very carefully choreographed crowd scenes. It's really lovely. And while Odo is talking, the emus are squeaking. So Quark is reporting to him that his 2 near-naked ladies are missing. He's missing 1 blonde and 1 brunette. And Odo says, "Can't you see I'm busy? Don't scare them!" to the Bajorans who are herding the birds. And Quark says, "1 minute they're whispering sweet nothings in my ear. The next minute, the sweet nothings are gone." Which is either a really sweet way of putting it. He just wanted someone to mutter nice things to him. Or there's an implication that the 2 women are themselves sweet nothings.
Let's say both are viable and on the table without wanting to demean our lovely Quark.
We then cut to a shot of the 2 Bajorans who are looking around baffled because the 2 emus, the Gunji Jackdaws, have disappeared. The 2 women walk into shot towards Quark. They've suddenly reappeared. And he says he was looking everywhere for them. Don't do that to me again. Quark then asks Odo what he has conjured up during all this, and Odo replies that he spent all his time chasing incarnations of the prophets, long-dead lovers, Gunji Jackdaws, blizzards, trollops. Again, don't sex shame on the promenade.
Yes, exactly. Again, it's another Odo rule that we should apply to Odo here, which is no slut shaming on the promenade. We don't know anything about these ladies. They may be far more complex than their interest in Quark, which admittedly is a little bit suspect. But yes, we did both bump on it and go, "Oh, come on." Trollops is not a word we would stand for.
Quark then says, "As I've always said, a man without any imagination. Come along, my dears, and I'll show you what a fertile imagination can do." And I've just put, ew.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. You know what you can take away from things like this is our characters are believable because they are horribly flawed. I mean, horribly flawed. From Bashir through to Odo, through to Quark, they have, unpalatable views. So it makes them more real. It makes them a bit more believable than, One Note Riker and his tromboning aliens from here to Rigel. It gives them more...
like Riker, goddammit.
Well, sure. Listen, all options are on the table. But I kind of have to go, okay, that's the nature of the character. That is what they're like. They are.
It's true. They're putting him in character again. They're not necessarily condoning his behaviour. They're just displaying it. And the next scene is Odo walks into his office, mutters, "Imagination," derisively, like a grumpy Disney character who's about to learn about the magic of imagination.
Yep.
Oh my God, it's just so clunky. I kind of love it. I kind of hate it.
Yes.
But yes, he then runs level 1 personnel sweep of all pylons as per Cisco's instructions, but he then glances up at one of the video screens and sees Quark communicating with him through it, and Quark is in one of the cells shouting, "Let me out of here!" He bashes his fist against the cells on Deep Space Nine, as they were in TNG, have force fields. So there's no bars between you and the prisoner, just this field which, when struck, flashes in orange. And Odo asks him how he got in there. Quark says, "You put me in here." And Odo looks satisfied with himself and says, "I guess I didn't I?" And Quark disappears from the scene a second before the screen goes off. And Odo chuckles to himself and says, "No imagination indeed." Which is a bit of a reversal of what I would have expected. I would have expected this episode to teach Odo a lesson by having something happen which Odo doesn't recognize as being his imagination. And then he's forced to reckon with the fact that, I do have an imagination after all. But no, it's just a very quick, I do want things, actually. Yeah, Odo locked up. Fantastic. And he just blithely goes about his day.
I think you're right.
And we next cut to Jake. Sisko is using a stylus to prod a pad in his quarters. He throws away the stylus and puts on a baseball glove. He then hears a crowd cheering, and Buck Bokeh appears in the room and throws a ball to him. But Jake, he's so wholesome. He says that he can't go out. He's got homework to do. And Buck says, "But you'd rather be at the ballpark." And they discuss how Sisko will kill Jake if he goes out without doing his homework. Sisko then suddenly pops into being behind Jake. He's just leaning over the sofa with one hand like this. It's really casual, and I like it.
I like it. I've got to admit, I did actually look at that and go, I could imagine Sisko doing that really, but I could also imagine a fancy version of Sisko doing that. I don't know if that's the real Sisko or not. I think it was meant to be a fancy one, like Buck Bokeh was testing.
I think he just suddenly, literally pops into appearing on screen. He doesn't walk on. There's no camera turns away, and he's there.
Got to be
it's definitely fictional, but he does look like Sisko, kind of casual and chatting with his son.
Yeah.
And he says, "Well," and Jake he uses his fake father, who he recognizes isn't really him, for making excuses for not having his homework. He says, "I didn't understand the directions, or the instruction sheet had disappeared." And Ben says, "You really expect me to believe that?" And Jake says, "No, I guess not." And then Ben disappears, and Jake says, "I've really got homework to do." So Buck Bokeh disappears as well. It's really cute, just Jake sitting there, just talking himself into doing his homework. Nog isn't in this episode, possibly, I think, because Aaron Eisenberg had a lot of work to do in previous episodes, and between the long makeup and long days of working, he was a young man. He probably needed to go and do some actual homework.
I can imagine. I liked this scene because it did feel a little bit like our figments were conducting a bit of a test there. They were like, okay, they indulge their imaginations. Their imaginations are sometimes scary or strange. And it seems in this scene, Jake is actually showing, I am imagining something, but I'm purposefully choosing not to follow that imagination. Some characters indulge their fancies. Quark imagines his ladies, and he gets his ladies, and he's very happy. Jake imagines the ball game, turns down the opportunity to have it. So I can see how the explorers, how Buck and his crew would be kind of like interested in that the different characters have different reactions. They've already talked about how they don't understand how O'Brien could imagine a character he's frightened of, and Bashir imagines a character he doesn't actually want what he imagined from them. So it feels like another little bit of just context for what it is they're doing here. So
that's a really nice observation, and also just the fact that as humans we sometimes imagine conversations with others before having them.
Yes, that's a really good point.
Through a conversation with his dad, imagining the excuses he'll give and resting on, that's really not going to, given who my dad is, that's not going to work.
Yeah.
So you're right. It's a nice observation that it is the fictional characters looking at what happens when we use our imaginations.
Exactly, and I love the context as well. That we do imagine these conversations with people, like the arguments you always win in the shower hours after you've actually had them. That feels very believable.
You never listen. Yeah. Right, I'm gonna skip through the next scene fairly quickly. It's just next year of DS9, then we're in Ops. They'll learn a bit more information about the rate of expansion of the rift. They ascertain that moving the station won't make much difference because as soon as it collapses, it's going to take the whole star system with it. The torpedoes they're going to use will be ready in 6 or 7 minutes. And then there's just a few shots of the different crew members looking up at the rift on the screen and the fictional characters doing so as well. We then fade back in, we're still in Ops. Kira comes up in the turbo lift advising that the pylons have been secured, and everyone's been moved to the habitat ring for the time being.
Yes, that's right. Yes.
I like that it's called habitat. It feels very, I don't know, I think habitat, I think either the chain store of furniture or animals. Habitat. They don't call it habitat. It's the habitat ring, which makes it sound very hamstery. Fake Dax says to Bashir, "You're worried," and he replies, "You bet I am. If this doesn't work, nothing, real or imagined, is going to survive." And the script has her say very sincerely, "Hold me, please." And he does, not because either of them is horny, but because she's genuinely frightened and he just wants to comfort her, which is kind of nice.
And it's believable because we know now that they have independent thought. You know, they do think for themselves. So I can absolutely understand that actually, one of them might be
this less resilient version of Dax is very frightened.
He's frightened and needs that reassurance, and it's believable. I totally bought it.
We then have a shot of two missiles leaving the station, heading towards the anomaly. We've got quite a lot of techno babble, which I'll cut down on. But
so much in that sequence,
But Kira does say, perimeter sensors are picking up subspace oscillations. What the hell does that mean?
Love it. Absolutely love
it. In-world is her not understanding what these subspace oscillations mean. But it's a nice bit of lamp shading of, I've just said a string of absolute techno babble. It's brilliant. It's lovely. I like that they let her do that.
Yep.
But then at this point, things get dangerous. The station starts to shake. There's a shot of Quark on the floor in the bar with one of his trollops. And Quark is reaching out for what looks like a bar of platinum.
He is, absolutely.
There's a frightened woman next to him, and he's just there trying to get hold of his money on the floor.
Oh, Quark. It's very heavy. It's lampshading again. A poor quality character trait, but sure, that's what this episode's doing. Go for it.
It's unreal. Then sparks are flying in Odo's office. He calls up to Ops, but he can't get through. In Ops, most of the lights are off. I think it's one of the first times we've seen this happen. Screens are blinking on and off when they shouldn't be. Kira says that she'll reroute pathways, and the screens eventually light up normally. But
I thought it was actually quite a dramatic sequence. The damage DS9 takes is really visible. I've again lots of TNG ones where they kind of superimpose the sparks, and it's all about okay, the camera's being shook. Whereas this place, they throw stuff around, sparks
you got
really
explode, falling down, and people are on the floor. They can't stand up.
And the light that comes in through the window, because I think just for a split second, the light from outside the station comes in through the windows at the very top of Ops, and it's like, oh god, this is happening. It's not just on a screen, for the crew. I mean, obviously it's on a screen for us, but it just felt like actually this is quite intense. They're really wrecking the set. I liked it.
Yeah, you're right. They really did attack it from all angles with physical props, with camera shaking, with all of the cast being on the floor, struggling to get up. Yeah, it looks very real. It looks very dangerous.
Yeah, loved it.
The shield damage in Section 4, so Sisko tells Odo to get everyone out of there. He acknowledges. Dax says that the sensors aren't operating. They can't get any readings from the rift. At this point, fake Dax is lying down on her back. Her head is bleeding. Something has hit her. And Bashir is sitting there with his hand on her forehead. And fake Dax is very frightened and says in the most frightened voice we've heard from Dax, "I can't feel my hands." And Bashir, although he knows that she isn't a real person as such, she's a figment of his imagination, he tells her to lie still. He asks Bokai to go and bring in the medical emergency kit. He goes and gets it. She says, "I'm sorry," and he just kind of soothingly shushes her. And she says, "I never meant to bother you." And he says, No, you didn't bother me." And she then can't keep her eyes open. He tells her she should because she has a nasty concussion. She closes her eyes and he starts shouting, "Dax, Dax," trying to get her to respond. It is quite an emotional moment, despite our knowing that this is a fictional and less well-rounded version of Dax. There's nonetheless real. No, it doesn't.
You are transported into the immediacy of the scene. The characters are distressed visibly. It's believable. It took me right into it, and you thought, I don't know what this other Dax is, but nonetheless, you are concerned about them. Credit to them immediately.
She's a being who is in pain and who is suffering.
Exactly. You don't want to see that.
And then real Dax says that the readings don't make any sense, which they don't. O'Brien says the rift's going to start expanding again within minutes. Sisko asks for suggestions. Nobody has any.
No.
Rumpelstiltskin says that he has a suggestion. Maybe he can help. And he tells O'Brien, "You created me with powers beyond those of mortal men, and I would be more than happy to use them to assist you. for a price. At which point Keiko and Molly suddenly flash into being in ops. And Rumpelstiltskin says, I've always wanted a daughter. I think this is the level of threat that was meant to be there from Rumpelstiltskin throughout the episode. But here, because it's a critical scene, O'Brien is supposed to make that choice. Does he sacrifice his one and only daughter for everybody in the star system who will die if he doesn't? O'Brien asks, can Rumpelstiltskin seal the rift? Rumpelstiltskin says he can. O'Brien says, then do it, damn it! And Rumpelstiltskin asks, will you meet my price? O'Brien says, this is crazy, you're out of a storybook, a fairy tale. And Rumpelstiltskin asks again, are you willing to give her up to save so many others? At which point Cisco says, no, he doesn't have to, because he's worked it all out. So, yeah. So he starts asking Dax, when did the rupture first appear? And Dax says, well, you were there. It was shortly after you two told me about it. And they were talking about the mysterious emission. She started imagining what it might be. And it turned into the subspace rupture that she had imagined. And then all of them learned about the Hanoli incident, and all of them assumed that the same thing might happen here. So there is no real rupture and absolutely no threat to the station and the system. So Cisco takes the risk, ends Red Alert, and tells O'Brien to drop the shields, but most importantly, to believe it.
To believe the power of positive thinking, I put in my notes.
Yes. I think they get a nice match between the technical, everything that's going on, the reading, there's the science of it. It's not unrealistic that these people thought this was happening.
Yeah, absolutely.
But it is also space magic, and you've just got to believe hard enough.
That is... Yeah, it is a bit odd, but what I do like is that it gives them the Star Trek way out, which is the third way, you know. Oh, we've tried science, we could try the crazy magic at a price, and it's like, no, there's always an alternative way to do things. And we've talked recently about how Star Trek, you know, seems weird when they don't, when they only give you a black and white solution, because there was a recent episode that was resolved with just like a really unpleasant black and white solution.
Yeah, in Progress, it was either we force the people to leave their moon.
Oh, that was it. Yes, thank you.
And there wasn't a third solution. I think Kira's tried to reach one, didn't come to one. It felt really, it felt deeply unnerving because I'm not used to that in Star Trek.
Exactly. So we're back to it. Here's Cisco saying, actually, we have another way out. We just think hard enough and all of our problems will go away. And I wish that was true, man. I really wish that was
there's
true.
A Doctor Who episode like that in The Mind Robber, Patrick Troughton.
Oh my God, wow, yes, there is.
There's a unicorn running towards them. Yes. And he's there telling Jamie and his other assistant, whose name?
Zoe,
saying Jamie's it's not real. Just know that it's not real. And Zoe's screaming.
Yes. It's a great episode. The land of, the Mind Robber, set in the land of fiction where belief shapes the universe. It's a very well established, I think, conceptual trope for a lot of speculative sci-fi. So that doesn't surprise me. But what a great connection to make. Yes, I think there's a lot to be said for the land of fiction being very much like this. And yes, conquered the same way. You know, let's fight them on their own terms. Let's believe strong enough. And as you say, it absolutely works. You know, they power down the shields and everything is just, there's no anomaly, there are no subspace oscillations, no other technobabble going on.
Book and Rumpelstiltskin then disappear. Yes. We then have an exterior shot of DS9 with the rupture nearby, and the rupture just blinks out of existence, leaving the station calm. Fake Dax is sleepily smiling up at Bashir, who tells her, you're going to be fine. And she says, of course I am. I have the best doctor in the galaxy. And then she disappears.
And he looks a little bit bereft, I thought. He does.
It lingers on him for a moment. He does just look, a little sad.
But yes, I think that basically vindicates Cisco's approach. And we realise that, yes, it was all happening because they were imagining it. They were imagining the whole threat to the station.
But Kira then says it still makes no sense. Why did the imagined characters appear in the first place? And Dax says they might be related to the still elevated Thorin emissions in the plasma field. Cisco tells Dax to continue her analysis of the plasma field, but this time, no speculations, just facts. Cisco then tells Kira to go to Yellow Alert for the next 26 hours till they know there's no more threat, and then says, Chief, take your family home. That's an order.
Nice. Love that. And also a nice reminder that DS9 apparently runs on a 26-hour day. Who knew? I don't know what you do with the extra hours. Longer in the bar, longer in bed in the morning. I don't know.
I think they just disappear into your working day. Same as any extra. I don't know. But yeah,
Mm,
Cisco in the final scene is in his office. He's sitting in a chair with his eyes closed, just resting after this immense event took
understandable.
place. And then Buckeye appears, friendly and tossing and catching a ball. And he says, "This imagination of yours is a tough concept for us to get a handle on, Ben. I will give a broad overview of the scene rather than reading every every word of
Yeah.
it." But Buckeye Cisco tells him that they've been exploring the galaxy. They've
Mm,
been watching the DS9 crew for a while. They followed one of their shuttles back through the wormhole,
yes.
and they wanted to learn more about them through this imagination experiment. They say that no one was ever in real danger. What dangers were there were created by the imaginations of the crew. And he says that he especially admires Ben Sisko's capacity to have such an affection for someone you've never even met. Sisko tells him that they haven't tells Book that he hasn't told him anything about them,
Mm.
and Boca says maybe next year. Tosses his baseball to Sisko and then disappears. And I think we have a nice shot of Sisko just kind of smiling contemplatively and holding his baseball in the final. Oh
Do
yeah, I've got Buck just doffing his cap to him, and then yeah, holding his baseball.
indeed. Which
And then
becomes
Cisco just walks out of his office towards the team and presumably to brief them on what's just happened.
mhm,
And we cut to end of episode.
cut to end of episode.
Yeah.
Yep, and I think it is no spoiler to say we never hear from these people again.
God damn it! But they said they might come back.
TNG
But
introduced that
wouldn't lie.
bug species that lived in Dexter Remmick's neck, and they sent out a signal into deep space, and they never came back. Star Trek
Good
loves
point.
setting up plot lines that never go anywhere, I'm afraid, and this is one of
And
them.
then some bad guys that keep coming back no matter how many times you kill them, the Borg.
Yeah, I get that. You know, the Borg are fascinating, but they are just. Oh,
A
anyway,
little
never mind.
overdone.
Never mind. That is a Voyager into Picard and the movies problem. You know, let's leave that. Should this podcast ever, get into that territory?
Oh, good God. 2 decades time.
Yeah, exactly. So there we are. So I think going into it, we both said that we we have very uneven views on this episode. Some good bits,
Hmm.
some bits we really didn't think worked. I mean, what do you think now that you've dissected it with me here on the operating table?
Yeah, I think saying there are bits of it that I really like. I love the warmth of Book Bokai. I
Oh
love
God,
some of
yeah,
the
me too.
decisions made about the episode that it wasn't going to go into some of the deeply dark territory that it could
Yes.
have. I think a bit of me would have enjoyed that more. I like a good psychological dissection of a character. I like the idea of people's worst fears appearing and us then having to investigate what that means.
Mm,
Um, but no, I enjoyed it. It's light, it's silly. Um, we learned some innocuous facts about the characters. I think they could
mm,
have gone a bit deeper on that. We could have learned a lot more about these characters than we do in the episode.
mm.
But I like that we just get some nice warm backstory on, well, not backstory, but we get some depth to Cisco's love of baseball. Um, Hopefully, Bashir will be slightly cured of his Dax obsession, given how embarrassed he was this episode. I fear that that isn't what happens. One thing I do regret is that Garrick wasn't here, because
Yes.
they could have had one character stay in their quarters for the entire episode and see something very plot important.
Mm-hmm.
We could have had
Mm.
Garak imagining his whole spy ring being blown up. We could have had we could have had anything, and it would have been held away from all the rest of the characters and given the viewers something that the rest of the cast wouldn't know.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that could have been a lot of fun. That could have added a
Yes.
lot of tension. It could have set something up for a future episode. So I think, as I've said, this episode was designed to be free floating. It doesn't
Yes,
have to fit
100%.
in the time flow in any particular place. But yeah, I think that's a missed opportunity. I would have liked for that to happen. Just some dark little corner of the station where something very important is happening while all this nonsense is going on.
I think that
But
is
it's a personal preference.
no, no, absolutely, and I think that is something that, no, to pick an example, Babylon 5 does very well. It has an excellent ability to run multiple plot lines going on in different parts of the station that may not pay off for episodes and episodes. And I think that is
Yes.
testament to Straczynski's fantastic plan for his show, whereas Star Trek basically Deep Space Nine started from a basic concept and then just shopped around for writers to do Star Trek episodes. And it will take them some time to establish the concepts they want to work around. They're already ahead of where TNG was in that they've got consistent things like the Bajorans, the Cardassians, these galactic neighbors, and Cisco's backstory and his family. these concepts
We've got
exist.
children on board who actually exist and have
Exactly.
plots.
So they are progressing beyond TNG's somewhat limited kind of script beginnings, but they're still not into that kind of really conceptual arcing plot, which, yeah, admittedly Straczynski pioneered, but Star Trek will eventually get there. Deep Space Nine will eventually start having these overarching plots, but not yet. We need to get to season two at least to start having things kick off more
I think
convincingly.
we've only got a few episodes left,
We are
haven't we? Are there
very
20
close to the end. I think
episodes in this?
3 episodes left.
Oh,
3 episodes left. That's
oh
some
yes.
horrible real world context there from Lieutenant Indoor Cat, which is comes a few weeks after the '93 World Trade Center bombings. Not the 2001 attacks, obviously the earlier '93 attacks.
Mm.
So a bottle episode of light-hearted nature might fit more accurately,
Ah,
and yeah, I can believe that. I've just
yeah, I think especially this series
mm,
with the context of the Cardassians and Bajor
yeah,
and terrorism has come up as a theme in more than one
100%.
episode. Yeah, to have an episode like this that you can put in at any point
Hmm.
and have it not contain anything that's likely to relate to real world events, yeah, would be a real boon.
Absolutely. I can totally understand why they did it. So that's some good context. Thank you, Indoor Cat. Yeah. So I think we've come away enjoying bits of this, and ultimately not being offended in the same way that we were Vortex, for example, which remains our worst impression of season one.
Offensively bad episode.
I would agree. Whereas this was had some really great bits, but yeah, I do think ultimately to me the impression was that this has been written and rewritten several times, and there were aspects of each version in it. The
Yeah,
the inconsistent nature of Rumpelstiltskin's character, for example, is a prime example of them introducing that very late on in the mix and trying to make it fit in with other things that had already been established.
I think
Um,
given that though that it did go through several iterations and a
oh yeah,
change of character,
absolutely.
it hangs together remarkably well. And I think that although you found it very jarring when we suddenly moved from yay fancy characters, Bashir and Jadzia, ooh woo, to oh my god, we're all going to die and we're taking Bajor with us.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
yeah, it is a bit jarring, but I think generally speaking, the episode hangs together well. There are no points where you don't understand what's going on because they failed to transmit information from one
Hmm.
character to another.
Hmm.
The editing is excellent, the direction is
Oh
really
yeah.
good.
Yes, do love
Yeah,
that.
they threw a lot of effort into this episode. It shows, it works really well. I think I just have a personal preference for something a little bit deeper, a little less candy flossy.
100%, and I do think that in the more comic moments they did disservice to characters we are still learning to try and like, and as you correctly say, we are waiting for them to get past this, give us these characters fully formed and less like to make really stupid decisions and
And
have
bring
really
Garak back, you
thoughts.
cowards.
They will. They will. It is coming. I can promise you that. So every episode we do of this gets us closer. But there are some great ones before season one rolls out, I'm pleased to say. So I will move us closer to it. Yes. Ultimately, great. We had a good time. We had plenty to talk about. We laughed. We grimaced. We had the full range of experiences of a Star Trek episode from
Laughter and grimacing.
laughter and grimacing, fear, elation, and eye rolling. All bases were covered. So, yes, I shall wrap us up as we are now pushing 2 hours, 60 minutes, which is about average for us, I would say.
We were restrained.
We were indeed.
Unlike Bashir by fake Jadzia.
Yeah, yeah. So, I would like to thank chat for sticking with us all this time and popping in with their contributions. I would like to thank Lieutenant the Indoor Cat for their regular contributions, context, and moderating. Thank you, Nigel. And obviously, I would always like to thank Kat for joining me on this wild ride through DS9. We shall hopefully be back in a couple of weeks' time with another episode. And just thanks so much. Please stick around, and we will see you out there. Take care.
Okay.